my computer clock.
You are on.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the August 12th Norwich Select Board meeting. And I just have to read this little blurb again. As chair of the Norwich Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6 to Executive Order 01-20 and Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, I confirm that we are meeting via Zoom. The public has the ability to participate in this meeting by, I can't remember, either physically raising your hand, which I should be able to see, or if you're on the phone, I can't remember the unmute, *9.
*9 is to unmute and mute.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, *6. *9 is to raise your hand or lower it.
Okay. And just to let members of the public know, Roger has temporarily given over the reins of Zoom host to Herb while he is participating in another meeting. He'll be back shortly. So I am, as I mentioned, Claudia Brochu, chair of the Select Board, Norwich Select Board. Herb Durfee is here. Mary Layton is present. Rob Gear is present. John Langus is present. Miranda Bergmeyer, the assistant to the town manager, and multiple members of the public. So, having gone through that, first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Any board members wish to make additions, deletions, change the order? Rob and John, or John, any additions, deletions?
I don't have any changes. I was curious whether on the Solaflect contract, if that was notified to Solaflect.
I don't believe so, but I anticipated this as being kind of a very high level. What does the board wish to go? How does the board wish to proceed?
Yeah, I agree. I just think that we should maybe think about having a policy that if a public citizen or one of our local companies is named as an agenda item, they should probably be given the courtesy of a notification so that they're aware of it and can make plans to attend.
Very good point. My error.
I don't think it's your error. I mean, we haven't really talked about that before, but it occurred to me with this one.
Okay. We'll do so in the future, for sure. Any other select board members want to adjust, change, reorder? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to public and select board comment. Any member of the public wanting to make a comment on issues not on the agenda? And I see Stuart Richards. I just want to, again, remind people, prior to speaking, be sure you state your name and locatable address. So Stuart, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Stuart Richards, 82 Elm Street, 36 years. I hope that everybody present, either remotely or in whatever way they are present, I hope everybody is healthy and coronavirus free. With that, I'd like to talk about the open meeting law and the violations that occurred concerning the open meeting law recently by the Planning Commission. I think everybody is aware of the importance of the open meeting law with respect to our democratic process and transparency. And it just is, unfortunate that there have been several violations. I'm not quite sure how many, by the Planning Commission. The crux of the matter is that you can't have an official body, whether you call it a working group or whatever you call it, that does not hold public meetings, because if the select board appoints a committee or a working group, or the Planning Commission appoints a working group, it is very, very important that the public be informed, that the public be involved, and that we are able to participate. That's the crux of the matter. I'm thankful to our town manager, who has flagged this and made the correction, I hope. And we are awaiting a cure by the Planning Commission to the violations that occurred. I'm especially sensitive to the issue over which the violations have occurred, because it relates to the planning, it relates to the town plan that we have passed, which calls for more intense development. And that presumably is going to be facilitated by wastewater, by an additional wastewater treatment plant or some other form of municipal sewage, which could have a significant impact on taxpayers. So it's highly important, I think, for the public to be involved with anything to do with wastewater treatment, which is going to be municipal. So again, thank you, Herb. I hope that there is follow through on this, and that the Planning Commission follows through and cures the problem as you have requested, and that we can move on and make sure that in the future, there will be no further violations of the open meeting law, and that the public will be invited and welcome to participate, just as they are here tonight and at all times, actually, with the select board. Thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you, Stuart. Any other public comments?
Stuart has his physical hand up again, Claudette. But I don't see any other hands.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I just had a question. Is it appropriate at some time or another to comment on correspondence? What's the proper procedure?
Good question.
Now it'd probably be a great time.
Yeah, I would say go for it.
Okay, I'd like to underscore what I think is, which I hope has been corrected with respect to our chief of police and our police in general. I wrote a letter, which is part of the correspondence, where I felt that the police chief was left out of discussions relating to policy. And it's certainly appropriate to have discussions about policy. But if you're going to talk about police policy, it just seems to me to be a no-brainer to involve the police so that they can have their input. So hopefully that going forward, hopefully that will be part of the way you operate.
The chief was involved and had input into the policy.
At the outset? I'm commenting about the outset. At the outset, she was not involved, according to her.
I'm happy to speak to that, Claudette, if you would like.
Sure, go ahead, Roger.
Sure. So as you said, Stuart, as the town's chief policymakers, we are responsible for making policy for all of our departments. And so like that is our role. And I think in that process of beginning that, Herb actually, uncovered a document from 2006 that was in fact a policy to make policies. And also, Claudette reminded me that in the last 2 years, we tend to have a first and second board member in writing policies. And so my initiation of the writing of that policy, while at least under the 2006 document was perfectly appropriate, it was pointed out that it could stand to have at least a participation by a second board member, which then in subsequent versions, I did engage Claudette. And then of course, I also engaged our town manager, who in turn engaged the police chief. As John Langus has said, we always have to be vigilant about whether to make sure that we create policies equally for all departments. And I would invite you to think about whether or not you would have a finance department create their own rules for auditing. But we had a very, as I said in all of our conversations, it was really, I learned a lot from my conversations and I really appreciated it. And I think the board with a 5-0 policy with participation from that department did something that was in response to a lot of citizens asking for more transparency at a moment of state-sponsored violence, right?
Well,
So-
I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that the chief was, although she was not initially involved, that she was involved subsequently, and that you have arrived at a policy that is apparently suitable and in coordination with Chief Frank, who I think is a terrific chief.
Sure.
Thank you, Stuart. Any other public comments? Any select board comments? I would like to publicly thank Bonnie and Judy from the town clerk's office for our very successful dump vote, for lack of a better word. And for all of the BCA members and select board members who were at Tracy Hall until well after 11, counting the vote, which I think for some people who have never been involved in that process is quite eye-opening. So we did a great job. Turnout was great. So thank you, Bonnie and Judy and everybody else that was involved. Any other comments? If not, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any board member wanting to make a motion on the consent agenda? Go ahead, Mary. Thank you.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
There's a second?
Second.
So motion made by Mary, seconded by John to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none from the select board, I have a couple of questions, Herb. On the AP warrant. And I can find the pages if you want. I just saw 3 payments to Spencer Powers for mowing that all had the same date or dates and the same check number. So I don't know if that was just an error on the accounting side or if there were 3 separate checks.
Sorry, what was the name that you talked about?
Spencer Powers. Do you want me to find the page number?
No, I found it. Yeah, I'll have to, I'll check on that one. What a lot of times what Becky does is she divides up the specific month, but this all looks to be repetitive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was this same thing under Town of Hartford for quarterly dispatch services to the police department. Same page, just a little bit lower. Same dates, same check amounts.
I have a question about this.
Yeah, my guess on those is that that's the, it's broken up into the quarter. but it doesn't have the detail that usually I see.
Right, so I don't know if we were paying for the full year or if it was just,
I think it's each month in the quarter. That's why there's 3 of them.
okay. And then I have one other question. On that top of that very same page, there was a first payment on a 5-year loan for almost $56,000.
That's the $240,000, for lack of a better term, bridge loan to cover the overages of the public safety building and the highway garage addition. It was a separate warrant article during last year's town meeting.
Okay. Do you know the balance of that loan? Or you said 200, never mind, you said you just,
It's a 5-year loan. The last one is about $48,000. This is the first of the 5 that we have. So it's basically 240,000 minus the 55,800.
okay,
I have the amortization schedule, but I gave it to Becky.
okay.
Do you
Mary,
want
did you?
you want a copy of that amortization schedule?
Yes, please.
Just
Mary
a
had a question.
procedural question. So we move the consent agenda, and I assume we're pulling this warrant, but these errors are going to affect what we approve as a bottom line. So should that be considered separately so we could say as amended?
My recommendation is to move it subject to the research on those.
Subject to correction?
Yep,
So that should be separate.
that's fine.
But, you know, I moved it without pulling anything. Should I add on to that?
So I will just say that we're pulling the AP warrants and then we can approve them separately. As
Okay.
amended.
That
as
sounds good.
possibly amended. Any other questions from the board members on any of the other items in the consent agenda? Okay. So we'll roll call this. Mary, how do you vote?
Yes?
Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Roger, how do you vote?
Yeah. Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And Claudette's a yes. And now moving to approve the accounts payable as amended. Is there a motion to, I don't like that word, that language.
Corrected, maybe?
I would just approve the warrants without those 2 payments, or the combination. It's a combination of the 6 line items that you raised, Claudette. So
Okay,
all you would be approving is everything but those
the
line
3
items
payments to
requested.
Spencer Powers and the 3 payments to the town of Hartford.
Yep, and then we'll bring those back in a subsequent payable warrant.
Good.
I'm sorry to interrupt the flow. I'm admitting someone with my computer, so I just want to have them verify themselves, and just because that's weird. Can the person who just joined identify themselves just for us? Connecting to audio. Sorry, everyone. Can my computer, can you just, or you the person who just joined the meeting, can you just identify yourself with us, for us? Go ahead.
Oh, mute.
No, who are you? I'm sorry.
Roger, it's Chris Clement.
Great. I'm just going to rename you Chris. I'm just very vigilant these days for the Zoom bombers. Okay, sorry, everyone. Continue. Chris is here. Chris Clement's here.
So Mary, do you want to rephrase that motion?
Okay, so we've approved the consent agenda. So this is the second motion about the AP warrant, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. I move we approve the AP warrant as amended. because we've amended it to exclude the payments that were incorrectly recorded. That's my explanation of it. So I would just say I move to approve the AP warrant as amended and approve a second warrant with the corrections at a later date. Does
And
that work?
can you just sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair, could you just move to approve the AP warrant, omitting the payments for Spencer Powers, LLC, and Town of Hartford related to quarterly dispatch for PD?
Is that an amendment to the first one?
No, that should
No,
just
it's-
be your master motion. And then I'll have to do the research and it'll come in on a subsequent AP warrant.
So moved. How about that?
That works. Is there a second?
Second.
So motion made by Mary, seconded by John. We'll roll call. Mary,
Yes?
Rob,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Claudette's a yes. The next item on the agenda is a presentation by Cynthia Stoddard on what reports NEMRIC can generate. And there's also a secondary discussion on a proposal or examples of financial reports that I submitted just to see how receptive the board was to that different format. So is it the board's pleasure to have Cynthia talk to us first? Go ahead, Mary.
I think I'd just like to comment a little bit on the Hartford model, just briefly, because I think it might relate to what we would hope could be available through the NEMRIC, which may or may not be. And I will just say that looking at the Hartford reports, it does remind me that in being involved with a very small nonprofit, which only had about $150,000 budget, we still were able to see budgeted amounts and what had been spent to date and the percentage. And in the Hartford example, they used a kind of metaphor, they call it a glide path. And I think that kind of thinking might be good for us. It's like, well, where are we at? Where are we in our, the budgeted versus actuals? How are we doing? And I think that kind of information would be helpful to us. And in our, for instance, AP reports and budget reports and so forth, I think we get a little bogged down in the detail. And so some kind of bird's eye view would be good for us. And I don't know if it's, a matter of a NEMRIC report or some other mechanism, but I did like that approach in the Hartford example. That's all I want to say about it.
Any other board member comments? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that presentation looked pretty helpful and an improvement over our current reports. And, I think you're right, Mary, having that maybe even just as the first couple of pages. So you have the detail behind it for anybody who wants to look into the detail of any particular top line item. But you get the overarching view right in the first couple of pages. And I think that's helpful.
It might be an analogy to a paper that's got an abstract. So you get the main idea, and then if you want the details and the structure, you go in there. So it's very similar to that.
Roger?
The only thing I would say is that was produced from a department of 3 for a town that is considerably larger and has much more complicated, I don't want to say much more complicated, that has considerable, more capital projects, more like grants, it's just a bigger community. It's a different community, right? So, which is not to say that we don't necessarily need something smart and high level and an introduction to the sort of the details, but I do want to acknowledge the staffing that they have in order to create that. It seems like Becky at this point is doing largely the work of keeping of accounts payable, essentially, right? So I don't know if she would even have the time to create a strategic and thoughtful document like that. So I offer that.
Yeah, part of my thought was, even if it's just the first 2 pages, where it has the broad overview and doesn't get down into a lot of the nitty gritty. But just a thought. And it would seem to, I won't go any further than that, I guess. So then I guess we will go to Cynthia Stoddard. Herb, do you want to do a brief intro?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Both Cynthia and I have had a little bit of discussion over the last few months, including when John Pepper was chair, about what the capacity and capability of the NEMRIC system is with regard to financial reporting. And so both Cynthia and I have agreed that it would be good to just basically have her come and talk to the select board. Normally this would be easier in a physical room. I don't know if Cynthia, you're going to be sharing your screen tonight at all, but if she can, great. If not, we can at least have some of the discussion that we're looking for. I'm glad to see Pepper here tonight because I think it's important to get his input in the ultimate side of stuff, even though he was on the finance committee for 1 day. And then what I have done as well is I'm coordinating with the new chair of the finance committee, who we've given some password information to, so he's started to go in and analyze the NEMRIC system, having a user capability, not the admin rights, but user rights, so that he can go in and kind of create reports and everything. And Cynthia has agreed to work with him on trying to create either those higher level or detailed reports that we hopefully can produce fairly readily for you. And so it's part of the evaluation process. But again, we asked Cynthia to come here tonight to give you some of that insight in terms of NEMRIC and what its capabilities are. And before I just turn it over to her, just kudos to Cynthia. I know she got paid for it, but she's been instrumental in getting Becky fired up with regard to all the stuff and how our finance operates on a day-to-day basis, and continues to work with Becky. We have changed a number of the systems and protocols, those still in NEMRIC, to try to do some of those, minimize the human steps involved with dealing with finance and trying to make them as hardwired as possible, the way that Langus and Pepper had talked about it a number of months ago. So there are procedures that have changed, and for the benefit of the modules that we have, but also I think for the benefit of minimizing human error in the process. So Cynthia, with that, if you could take it over.
Hi, everybody. I really wish I could, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I really wish I could be there in person. I have not been to a town hall since March 9th. So I've been sitting in this office for months. So it would be really nice to be in person, but we're just not there yet. So, but I'm happy to have the opportunity to just kind of put my name to a face. I know you guys have heard my name. I know you've heard about NEMRIC, and I know that there is some frustration level with reporting, and we want to make sure that we, as a software, give you what you need to make good, sound financial decisions. So let me just give you a little, I'm going to give you just a tiny bit of my background just so you can understand where I come from. So I was the treasurer in Westminster a million years ago. That was my first stint with public office. I then started working for NIMRIC support, director of support. I left there and became the finance director and manager in Putney. I was there for 5 years and then decided to come back to NIMRIC as NIMRIC is my home. And I love going to different town offices, trying to make things more streamlined and trying to just really give people what they need to make the decisions that they need within the town office. So I've been on all sides of the table. I also am a very active citizen in my town. If you ask the town, you'd probably say I was one of those really pain in the butt people that, that ask a lot of questions about financials. So I understand that you need that information in your hand to answer questions so you can feel like you're giving the best answer you can and you're the most transparent you can be. So my goal when I come into a town and consult is to make sure that we set systems in place that allow you at any given moment to produce a report that's up to date, that gives you your financial position. I don't like to have financials that I have to wait for 2 weeks after the end of the month. I don't want to wait for my audit, for the auditor to tell me how much of a fund balance I have. I want to know that. That's my goal when I walk into a town. So we've done some things to try to streamline the process, because we all know that reports are really good if they have all of the information in it. So we can help you produce a report, but we want to make sure that that report has the most up-to-date and accurate information we can have. So we've made some changes. We were making huge headway. And then I was there a couple days a week, 1 day a week. And then the virus hit and we just couldn't be in the same room. So that was a struggle for Becky and I at the beginning. We're kind of getting our footing back. And so Herb has been talking to me for a while about the fact that I think there is a thought that the reporting that you guys are getting, and I haven't really seen every report you guys have gotten. So I'm assuming, and Herb, you can correct me, I'm assuming, is it a balance sheet and a budget status report that they get right now? I think when Roberta was there, she may have extracted some information and created a spreadsheet that may have been more helpful to you. I really don't know exactly what it is. I should back up. I know what you're looking for. You want to know how much money have we had brought in? How much money do we owe people? How much money is owed to us? What are we expecting in for money? Where is our budget at? How much do we have left for the end of the year? I get those basic principles behind what it is you need. It's just the format that you want to see it in. So what I want to do tonight is really listen to you. Having the Hartford example is helpful for me to try to figure out what we can do to make the reporting that you're getting out of your software is what it is that you need to give you that bird's eye view. I think everything you guys said is true. I mean, you don't want to look at every single line item every single time you get this. You want an overview. And the information that's in this packet, there's a huge amount of narrative to help you even understand when you're looking at the numbers why they might be the way they are. I do also agree with Roger that there is a staffing difference. Hartford has, I looked today, they have 4 people in their department. And right now you guys have 2 with Cheryl and Becky. And and I know that that's something you guys are working on and talking about. And I think you might even talk about it tonight. But just in terms of the reporting, I think that this bird's eye view that you have, like Hartford's looking at, that's, I think, pretty simple for us to even accomplish pretty quickly with the reporting. So I just want to show you one report that's not going to look exactly like this, but I just want to show you that real quick just so you can see what it can do. Does anybody have any specifics they want me to look at when I share the screen, or is that what we're looking for right now? Or have any questions for me before I do that? No, I don't. Does Herb, does somebody have to let me share my screen?
I already did. You're good. You can go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, so all right, so this is the main screen when you go into the general ledger, which is where all of the reporting that you guys are interested in happens. I have not typed a password right today, so let's see. Okay. So the basic reports I believe that you're getting right now, one of them was the balance sheet, and actually that was something that I was actually surprised that I didn't see in the Hartford, that there was not a balance sheet included, which to me is and maybe it was just missed in this package, but that's a huge piece of information you need in order to understand your financial position. So I was surprised that wasn't in there. But so the one thing you're getting is a balance sheet, and I'm just going to go to that report. And you can get a balance sheet. See, these are all of your funds that you have, and each one of them can be reported separately, but we're just going to look at the general fund. That's the main, and this is going to be a to-date piece of information. So this is giving you the information of what your assets are, what your liabilities are. And Herb, you said this is what one of them that they're getting on a regular basis? Yeah. Okay. So you're familiar with seeing that. Then the budget status report is the one I was talking about, that we could condense. The other thing I just do want to note is, and I can't say this for 100%, I would have to ask the town of Hartford. I do not believe this is coming out of their software. I believe this is information they're extracting from their reports and putting it into Excel. And Claudette, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you know that or not, but.
I don't know that. I got it on their, off of their meeting packet material, but it looked to me that it was something that they were not exporting, or, just literally plucking from a report and putting it into a different.
Yeah, I think they're taking a report. They have an Excel spreadsheet set up, and then they probably print a report from their financial system. And then they put it into here, which I used to do that in Putney for certain reports that I wanted to put out. My goal is always to eliminate as many spreadsheets as you can and have your financial system, so you're not duplicating work. Your financial system should be able to give you a report that is usable so that you don't have to do that double entry. With that being said, we do have some limitations in our software. One thing is the font size. The font size is pretty small, so that's a little irritating. It's irritating to me sometimes because I've had to get different powered glasses in order to read some of it sometimes. So that's one thing. And the export to Excel does not export as glamorous as we would like it to. There's a lot of formatting when it has to get in there. But I would be curious, I don't know anybody at the town of Hartford to ask, but I would be curious if I don't think these are produced right out of their software. So that is a function that someone would have to do here if we wanted it exactly like this. But let me just show you this quick. And if we suppress all of the detail to the header. And then the other column I want to put in here is the encumbrance column, which you guys don't use encumbrances right now in the system, but we could talk about that. And I noticed that's one of those things that's on this report. So what this is missing compared to the report that you have in front of you, and see, let me just do something real quick. So if I don't suppress the detail, it's 19 pages. So you can see under each heading, there's the detail. If I suppress the detail, then it brings it to 3 pages. So it's not one page like this 1 or 2 pages, but it is less than what you've been getting. There is an option to suppress 0 balances. I typically don't do that because I believe 0 is a number and there might need to be something there. So, but if you have a lot of accounts that haven't been used for a long time, then you probably would want to suppress the zeros, or we would want to start doing some maintenance and cleaning up your chart of accounts so you don't have a bunch of stuff you don't need. Roberta was very good at keeping it pretty clean and not a lot of stuff that we don't need. But you can see, so what this report here is missing compared to what you have, it's a little longer. It's missing the encumbrances. See this column here where it says encumbered? That's because we don't use encumbrances right now. I don't know in Hartford's system if they have to do an entry to do this, if it's a manual process, or if they have a purchase order system that actually encumbers this for them. But those are all things that we could do if that's the way you want to move. And encumbrance is just saying, okay, my budget's 7,200. I expect another 6,000 and I want to put that there so I can see where I'm going to end up at the end of the year, but I haven't quite received it yet. Same with expense side. And then there's the percent of the budget that's in here. We don't have the difference in dollars on this report. And then we also don't have the comparison from one year to the next on this report. We can get another report from one year to the next, but then we would have to take these reports and then put the numbers into Excel, which is what I believe they're doing in Hartford. And they may see this and they may say I'm wrong, and I would hope they would correct me, but I think that's what's happening. And when I look through the rest of the information, which is really good information, and whoever put this together did a great job explaining all of this, but these are all narratives that I don't believe are coming out of their software. It's something they're getting from their software, and then they're translating it to their either Excel sheets, and then obviously they're writing the narratives. Those don't come out of the software. So I guess what would be helpful to us is I believe we can get to a place where we can give you something that is really helpful with this, the way that you guys are doing your procedures and all of that now, that will also be an easy report for you to read and make sense of in a short amount of time instead of having to try to dig through pages of information. I just need to know, I mean, if this is the report you guys are thinking of, or if you find another town that has another report that you like, or you want to come up with whatever your own format is, I want you to know that we'll work together to get that done for you. It's just really hard for me as a consultant when they say, well, I'm not sure, they're not really liking the reports, or they're not understanding the reports. I've worked with boards before where one board really likes one format and then someone new comes and they like another format. We just have to change it. We just have to talk about it and say, what is it that you want? As a manager, the 2 reports that I used were the balance sheet and the budget status report. Those were the 2 that kept me on track with where we were budget-wise. I highlighted the things like in a narrative like you're seeing in here. I shouldn't say as a manager, I was the finance director. As the finance director, I would do the narrative and tell them the places we really needed to pay attention to, where I thought we would be at year end. But I think part of it is just getting that higher level. I don't want to say this because I'm not sure, but I know that at one point Hartford even had a CPA that was on their staff. I think it was Bill Hall, who now works for the league, that put a lot of this together. So I don't really have a ton more to show you because I don't know that we're there yet, because I'm not 100% sure exactly what it is that you want to see. I know what you want to see. I don't know what format you want it in. That's, I guess, is what I should say. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah. Thanks, Cynthia, for this. I think for me, you don't know what you don't know, and I think part of this this reporting to a board is it tells that information, right? And so I ultimately just want transparent reporting that allows me to know what it is that I don't know, if that makes sense. So, you know, I don't have, there's lots of lawyers, there's lots of finance folks in Norwich, and we have people of that background on our board, and we certainly have a finance committee, and we have an active treasurer. But for me, like my background is in, because you shared your background, my background is in the humanities. And as a project manager, like what I mean, I can tell you, I still remember the general ledger codes of when I was like coding things with the finance department. And so I know that I'm like capable of that kind of like fidelity, but I've never been able to do that with anything out of the town of Norwich. So I can tell you 0554 06 8253, I think was postage at the museum that I used to work. Right? So I knew that like for the African art department, like that was postage. And that GL code for postage was the same across all of our curatorial departments. And so, and then sometimes I had to put in requests to, you know, change funds. And so, and then, so I guess, you know, and looking even, we're getting into something different, but I think for me, like I would like, when we're doing expenses, I would like to see vendor, right? And then I would like to see where, like what the accounts they're coming from, right? So if I have a mowing service, that might come from DPW from this account, and then there might be like a general ledger code that follows it, right? So like I want to get to the point where it's like all mowing comes from that general ledger code and like that department, and then maybe postage always has the same general ledger code, and I just like know it from across department. So I'm like conflating a lot of things, but I think for when we are doing expenses, I would like to see, and this is something that Claudette has said, and there's another report out of Hartford that we can send on, they might make it, but I want to see vendor, and then I want to see like where the expenses are being charged to. When we had a $4 million grant, there was, the grant was coded as its own department, and then the expenses were charged that way. I don't know if that's appropriate either, but it was like the same system, and so I understood that too. And then obviously there's lots of back channeling that they used, even though the grant was like allocated to that department. And you can imagine that a large grant was used to cover other expenses at times and then brought back to its like real purpose. And so that was always documented in there, which was always horrifying for me as an administrator. So I'm now talking and I'm like kind of mumbling a little bit, but I guess what I'm saying is I want to be able to look at a report and learn things from it. Like I want to learn the general ledger codes associated with certain expenses with the department, and I want to see these codes build against vendors, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So when you see an expense, so that's me, and I don't know if other people want that.
So I just have a quick question. Is someone drawing on this that wants to say something before I close it? Because I didn't do that.
I have no idea what that is either.
Don't know who did that.
It was just a magic thing going on while you were talking. So, all right, I'm gonna close this, and I just want to look at something to see, because obviously when we're talking about things, well, I didn't mean to close that. When we're talking about this stuff and when you bring up the kinds of things that you want to see, you know, I immediately am thinking, okay, will this report work? And I think until you see it, you obviously can't tell me if it's going to work or not. So I just want to bring something without taking up too much time. I know you guys are on.
Well, I mean, if you don't necessarily have to do that in response to my comments if the board members don't.
Yeah, if other people have questions while I'm looking at this up, I can.
I don't know if what I said made sense. So if a board member wants to validate that, that's always nice.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think part of some of the stuff is a lot of times in all the cases, the reports are provided on basis of function rather than code. And I think a lot of what Roger's talking about is you'd like to see all the salaries lumped in one. So the report doesn't have like salaries under public works, salaries under PD, salaries under town manager. That at some point you sometimes just want to see salaries as a whole, healthcare as a whole, FICA as a whole, and that allows you to see a different, it's the same stuff, but just in a different sorting order. And for me, when I was a school board member and a select board member, that was helpful to see it from that. I understand what Roger's getting at specifically with the vendor related stuff, but I think too, that might've been a piece of what Pepper was looking. I know what Pepper wanted was the ability to just be able to get a dump and be able to play with it himself and sort it the way he wanted to, that was meaningful for him personally. But I do think that if there's a different way to sort the same information, I think that's getting halfway there.
John?
So yeah, sort of tying those couple of things together. I mean, I think the thing that I've been frustrated by is that it just doesn't seem particularly supple. So, so the understanding that we have is that even when Roberta was there, who was extremely competent in this software, very familiar with it, that it was still hard to produce reports on short notice. It was, we, have on enough occasions that it's troubling, gotten reports that are incorrect. So I'm a corporate executive. I look at financial statements all the time. And I know that in the world where people, do business, these sort of things are very easy to produce. They're easy to produce quickly. They're not meant to create work. They're meant to solve work by giving people a tool that's really provides insight. And so, I think that a few of us have just, quite frankly, come to the view that this is way outdated software, that the world has moved far beyond. And it's our understanding that most of our surrounding towns have abandoned it. I actually thought Hartford had abandoned it, but I don't know that for certain.
They don't use our software.
Okay.
No, they haven't for years. I don't know what they use, but they haven't for years. So,
yeah. So I mean, a given line item is providing the information that it purports to, but that comment from Herb, how why can't we easily shuffle this around? Why can't we look at things different ways? It's every time that someone asks for something in financial reporting, we know that in asking, it's creating a burden for the person who has to produce it. That to me is the single biggest problem with this.
And I totally agree with you. And until I have a specific request given to me to ask for a report to be produced, I'm not sure why it's a burden. I personally have used the software. Let me just say that you're right. The software is not the Cadillac of accounting software. I'm not gonna pretend like it is. I wish it was. I wish there were things that we could do different. There's things I've wanted to have changed, but we're a small Vermont company and we don't have a ton of money to do that. So I get that part of it, but I've used it for years and I've never felt like it was a burden for me to produce a report and get information quickly to when somebody asks for it. So until I understand what the specific request is and to find out the process that has been used either in the past or is being used now that people are finding it difficult, I can't really answer why it's difficult for them. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that I don't have to tip my head like I'm looking off into the. So my request would be that if you find yourself asking for something that somebody's struggling with getting you the answer, then maybe Herb, you can relay that to me so I can try to do it myself to see why they're struggling. Now, I can speak a little bit to when Roberta was there, and I'll tell you, she had some of the cleanest books I've seen in the places that I've gone when and working with her. But I believe there was a struggle to produce reports in a timely, like if somebody came in and wanted to know where you were as of a date, because there was a process where the information of what was paid and what was in the general ledger, that was only done once a month. We're doing that every single time we run a payroll or a cash receipt or a accounts payable now. So there could have been a delay in reporting from her because it was not being done after every single process. She did it once a month.
But that's sort of my point is that, you know, I think in other parts of the accounting world, you don't have to do something else.
I agree. Yeah, this is a transfer process. Yes.
And that becomes part of your accounting. I think, you know, I have no doubt that you, Cynthia, can run every report anyone could ever want. But I think that, you know, the difference is that any bookkeeper with any experience can run reports in QuickBooks, right? So you don't have to have 20 years of experience with this software. And what I think we've particularly struggled with is hiring, right? So we hire someone who needs to be fluent in Excel, needs to be fluent in QuickBooks, you know, some other, you know, I'm not an accountant, so I'm not sure what other mainstream accounting softwares are. That pool of applicants that will be fully fluent and able to, you know, recognize our accounting from the day that he or she sits in the chair is far greater than someone who's told that they have to be fluent in NIMRIC.
Well, I also know that those programs, especially QuickBooks, there is not an audit trail. And that's one of the things that we have been.
Sure. Yeah, you're not going to use QuickBooks for a town. Absolutely. No. Yeah, just like I said, I'm not an accountant. So
and I'm not gonna. I agree. There are other very high-powered fund accounting software programs out there. There's no argument on my end. I'm sure that the reporting is going to be more robust, but if the information, it's really about getting information into your system. You can have any system you want. If it's not input correctly, if it's not done in a timely fashion, it's just not, you're not going to get the information. But you guys, obviously you have every right and every opportunity to go out and shop around for software that might be more suitable for your needs. I would love for you to give us the chance to try to meet those needs with what you have. And obviously, if you decide to go a different route, obviously until then, we still want to meet your needs. You know, you still have to run a town. So the issue I have been having is I can't fix it on my end until I really know what it is that your needs are. And I'm getting a feel for it tonight, and I can work with Becky. I don't know if you're in the process of hiring someone else. We can work with that person. I just want to make sure that you guys know that we're here to try to get you what you need out of the software that you have right now. That's what you have. We got to get you the information that you need now.
Okay, I'm gonna try to wrap up our conversation here. I don't know what it is, if it's just the formatting of the Hartford data. What to me was so much more understandable.
Yep.
and I could view it very quickly and see in an instant where we were.
Was it mostly, I'm sorry to interrupt, but was it mostly the first 2 pages?
The first 3 pages, I would say.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
The narrative is nice, but that's the question we could always ask Herb.
right.
Claudia, I want to be respectful of your request, and I know that Mary and others may have questions, but I do have a payment manifest example that I still don't think is very, which is not brilliant, but given the parameters that we're working with, might be something to work towards. So I could quickly share my screen, or of course I can just maybe email it separately if you would like to move on.
How about if you email it separately and to the finance committee as well, especially since Manu is delving into the NIMRIC stuff?
Yeah, because I can work closely with him. Like if you guys relay something to him, like a format you're looking at or information that, then him and I are going to connect and we're going to go through the software together. So he can tell me, yes, that's what we're looking for. And I'm hoping that some of them are going to be as easy as a push of a button.
Well, and he may not quite know yet, but
Yeah.
I think it's more I'll know it when I see it type of thing.
Yeah.
And I know there are other finance committee members in the audience, and so hopefully we can get to where we want to get to. Just might take a little while.
It's that we had to start here. Conversations are good.
Any other comments from board members or anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you all. Maybe we'll all meet in person someday.
Thanks very much for coming by.
Someday.
Someday. Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't know how to get out of here. Oh, there we go.
Okay. So moving on to our next item on the agenda, the finance office staffing proposal. Herb had submitted a proposal to us for his plan on going forward with the finance office. And I'm going to make a major assumption that everybody's read it, and so we don't need Herb to go over it. But then as just questions for Herb from any board members. Go ahead, Mary.
I don't have a question for Herb. I think that I support Herb's proposal. And I know that as a board, we were interested in having a full-fledged finance director, and just in participating in some of the interview process. I just don't think we have the candidate at the moment. So I see this as more of an interim type strategy to hold things together. But I don't think we should lose track of our, our goal to have a full-fledged finance director at some point. I did think that in the interview process that the job description should be rewritten, that should be part of the process. And there may be some other ways in which, we can attract, I think, more qualified candidates, but it may take some time.
Go ahead, John.
I support certainly the first half of the proposal. I'm a little bit concerned about the idea of having our auditor serve as an interim finance director, because that then creates a new process where we have to get a new auditor. And so I'd rather not do that if we can avoid it. I wonder, we've talked a bunch of times about whether we've searched through the resource of Dartmouth partners who may have the skill sets necessary to do this sort of thing. And an interim position might be ideal for someone like that. So I'd like to know if that's been...
Folger Tuggle.
Joined the meeting.
Is that a question for Herb?
Yeah, I just wonder if that path has been explored, and if so, how.
I have not ignored it at this point. What I've been trying to keep myself reined to is the current 1.5 staff people arrangement. So the if you I totally get what you're talking about with regard to the second half. My real focus tonight really wants to be the first half and not lose the opportunity of Becky. And that would really help to keep the office going. The main reason for offering the second half of it really was to try to buy some of that time, including a budget process, so that we can have that joint discussion that we need to have to figure out what is the longer term solution. I'm be more than happy to explore that partner relationship, such as an interim director or something along those lines. Was just trying to keep the parameters reined to as close to the budget as I could with a staff and a half person rather than 2 full-time type things.
So I'm gonna treat that, unfortunately, as not being responsive to my question. This has been a suggestion that's been on the table for months for a position that's been open for over a year, or almost a year. There's nothing that says that such a person would have to be full-time. Part of the idea behind this suggestion is that if a partner comes with a person who's a graduate student at Dartmouth, their employment opportunities are by definition limited. They come along with their partner and they need to figure out something to do that's meaningful to them and maybe advances their career, is interesting, whatever. And so, they may be perfectly willing to work half-time, and they may have lots of skills that would be relevant to this. And there's an office set up at Dartmouth for the specific purpose of finding those folks something meaningful to do while their partner students are here. It's a single phone call. And I am going to keep pushing this until that one super easy potential solution is taken seriously and followed up on.
Yep. No, I understand. I guess I'm not understanding that there's an actual office at Dartmouth that does that. So if you've got that phone number or can help me get a link to that, that would be awesome.
Roger?
I have 2 questions. Like, one is, respectfully, John, I don't really see the tangibility of that suggestion. That I actually don't know how I would implement that. I'm familiar with a partners program. It is often like a high-level recruitment for things like their MBA program. I don't know like how formalized that kind of matter is with the college on a whole. I mean, I think what you're describing is an employment trend of people moving to this region when one partner, I mean, that's my story, right? When one partner secures employment and then the other one is sort of left to find employment. So I think what you're speaking to is, as Doug Wilberdine has said in the chat, it's a tuck program, and it is, they follow. They give them tuck jobs, or they work with the college as a whole. So, which is just to say, that kind of relationship building is and the recruitment is important. I reach out to Herb. I've done LinkedIn searches, right? And I said, can we recruit some of these folks who, and reach out to them? So I think the general suggestion of or the question is what are you doing to recruit for this position rather than advertise for this position might be something that Herb can respond to. So I just wanted to say that in defense. And then my only other question is, I know you reference the DPW laborer position as being able to compensate for this offer to make the finance assistant full-time. I'm concerned about what it means to take that suggestion just because I know that it's been strongly communicated in other instances that the labor position is really, really important. And I guess now it's not important because there's a competing priority, but I just, I am concerned about, biting, what is it, taking from one mouth to feed another, that kind of analogy. So there's two issues. Like one, like Herb should recruit, maybe not with the specificity of John's suggestion, because I don't necessarily think that program exists. And two, I'm just concerned about your suggestion of removing the general labor funds to be able to fund this.
Yeah, it's not my preference to do any of that, but I think that the priority of staffing the finance office takes precedent at this point. So I've had discussion with the DPW director to try to find funding within the existing budget in order to accommodate the expenses that may be necessary to deal with this. And that may even be the need to have a hiring salary higher than what we've either advertised or even include in the Conjury report and our pay schedule. So trying to be sensitive to that, but it does not diminish the need for that particular position. It's really trying to put the priority of the staffing in perspective for this given moment in time. It certainly makes for a healthy discussion during budget season, moving forward with some of the assumptions that are in there. I specifically haven't moved for the other point. I specifically haven't gone toward the recruitment side of stuff. It has been generally just an advertising campaign, for lack of a better thing, and that has not gone well. So that's why I was trying to buy some time so that we can keep the office going and have some additional joint discussion about what makes sense for such things like Mary brought up with the job description, the salary, greater pool. And I do want to be able to better understand what John Langus was talking about, if there's an actual specific office. I apparently misunderstood what he was talking about.
Any other board questions? So I have a couple questions. So the salary that you quoted in there for Becky was excluding benefits, is that correct?
That's just the salary side, yes.
So it's actually more than what the total dollar amount for a full-time could be significantly higher depending on what healthcare option she chooses.
Potentially could be. There currently is a good budget in there for healthcare benefit for the full-timer that typically is in there.
Yeah. And I also shared John Langus's concern about the Bonnie Batchelder piece. Because number one, when would she finish the audit? Number two, that would limit the time. She can't do the audit and be the finance. Anyway, I have all of those concerns. My other question is, if instead of trying to, we have as other people mentioned, a pool of very talented townspeople, especially in light of the coronavirus and COVID-19 and people maybe not having a job. I would think it would be worth just going out again with an advertisement. What harm could it do?
Would do anything though.
More than happy to do that. I think in talking to during the last round of interviews that we had with the folks that were part of that process, there was a mutual agreement based on Jeff Swenson's insight that your candidate pool will grow if your salary grows.
Yeah.
And I'm at the point where we need to, I appreciate that you're willing to move forward with the Becky side of that, but to be able to best get to the issues that you want to deal with, I also need that finance director side of stuff. So I am trying to figure out what would be a best, at least interim solution. And that may be a different kind of advertising, whether it's a combination of advertising, recruiting, the John Langus partnership with Dartmouth. I'm willing to continue to explore any and all of that. I'm just nervous about just another advertising that will have been probably the third or fourth in a 2-year period of time, and we're not really, I think, at the salary level that we need to be at. And I'm trying to be partnering with you folks in terms of this particular process because of the struggles that we've had in the last, at least the last year with the BECs. So I'm appreciating some additional direction besides just the typical town manager process.
So are you proposing just continuing the contract with Cynthia Stoddard?
I need to have Cynthia continued, but she is only time and materials right now. We don't have the bulk time agreement anymore because that expired and we used that up rather quickly. But she had the bulk of that time was to get Becky up to speed. So Becky has a huge she's been on a huge education curve. So the amount of time that Cynthia is really needed is really more for toward the audit, the higher level stuff that we need to deal with. And that's where Cynthia right now is helping to fill the gap.
Yeah, so if we don't go with Bonnie as the contracted high level person piece, what then?
I'm telling you right now that I have to go out and advertise at a higher level of salary. So I would like to have some direction tonight about how much money you are willing to pay your director, and if you want it, I'm assuming that you'd be fine with trying to advertise for an interim full-time finance director. So you would have 2 full-time people in the finance office. And if we get to that point, there would be a level of training for that person. But once that person's trained enough, I would hope that the reliance on Cynthia could be declined somewhat.
Quickly off the top of your head, do you know what would be, if we pull from the DPW for that one labor position that we don't fill? I don't have your memo up in front of me.
Right.
We would be taking, I can't remember how many dollars from that position, and could the rest of the dollar amount go to the finance director?
Yes. I don't have the exact amount off the top of my head, but there is some additional stuff left over from not hiring that laborer position that could go toward that.
Because my concern for the rest of the board is we can't wait until our next budget year for this finance person. So if we don't find a solution kind of like quickly, we'll have to wait until July 1. So, Roger, I see you kind of shaking your head, and I don't know if I'm interrupting somebody.
No, there probably could be some other people that could be outsourced. I mean, Bonnie was the immediate idea and discussion that I had with her, but that doesn't mean that she has to be that particular person. I'm just trying to figure out if we advertise for an interim, advertise for a full-time, or advertise for an interim solution of outsourcing. And I'm amenable to either 3, but again, the bottom line is that I want to do it such that it's in collaboration and partnership with the select board.
So, Madam Chair, where is like everyone's pulse right now? Seems like we all know, I mean, this isn't a choice, like, right? Like in terms of, we will obviously hire Becky at the full-time position. I think we're all in agreement for that. And it sounds like under your proposal, we have no choice but to lose the funds for the general labor position in order to achieve that, which I'm not thrilled about because there's a lot of public facing work that general laborer is going to be doing. And, our citizens might not be apprised of the internal chaos that weird, chaos is not the right word. I apologize. That is something that the work of the town is seen in the general labor position in a different way than the finance department is. And so I hesitate to lose that, knowing that people will see and benefit so in a different way from that. But it's very clear that that's what I think we all agree on you should
If
do.
we have a fixed pool of money, that's the one position or one of two positions that's currently not filled.
Right.
If you can come up with another funding source, I would love to hear it.
Right. I know. I hear you. So, and then the only other suggestion, and I feel like, I don't feel intelligent about the suggestion, is do you do an RFQ for contracted services for the finance director role to compensate while also performing recruitment in all of its forms for a future finance director? I don't know if we can, I don't know how I feel about authorizing additional funds at the beginning of a budget season for a new position search. And I also don't feel comfortable about doing that without looking at the schedule for all of our employees, quite frankly. So, yeah.
Doesn't sound like a decision.
It's not.
We're in a kind of a tricky situation.
The new suggestion I made, just because I was mumbling, is perhaps we hire Becky, and then perhaps in hearing Claudette and John's concerns, which I agree with about the auditor, about creating a different problem with that hire, perhaps we perform and put an RFQ, or put a request for some kind of contracted services for that role. That's my suggestion that I have right now.
I think that would work. But I think, it will be with a parallel track of trying to get a more permanent solution. So it's a messy track, but I think it would work.
I think one possibility to get more money into the position is to have a shared position. So if you had 2 or 3 small towns, you could pay someone quite well. And that person would be sort of like a large town finance director who had several very large department finance officials reporting to him or her, with each of the individual towns being like one of those divisions of a big city. So the thing is that paying $100,000 versus $70,000 is a big hit for our budget. But there isn't that tremendous a range in the salary range. So if you had 2 or 3 towns, you could pay $130,000, $140,000, and we wouldn't be any further out of pocket. And you would then have someone with a lot of experience that had a lot of capability, and again could maybe prove to be a very good resource.
But how does one know if there are other towns that are searching for finance officers, and how would you coordinate that?
Well, I can solicit that.
You got to talk to VLCT. VLCT is going to
VLCT.
know who's looking for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
A regional finance director. That's
Well, that went really well.
You did not suggest that.
So where does the board want to go with this?
I'm definitely supportive of the first half of the proposal.
And what direction are we going to be providing her for the either interim finance officer, or I don't know. Can we go through John's proposed, search out, possibly do a 2 or 3 town finance officer while we
I mean,
Follow Roger's track.
how many audit proposals did we get when we did those the last time where we had to get a new auditor?
There was
Or-
probably what, 4 or 6 proposals, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can do a little bit of a joint effort, and that is to try to solicit from other municipalities in Vermont if they'd be willing to share a finance officer type, but also at the same time frame, starting to put together RFP, RFQ type stuff for an interim, I'll just say interim solution tonight, whether that's a individual person or a firm. But my thinking is that we're not quite sure fully where we're headed. So at least trying to get through June 30 of next year, it would be the step that we would take tonight, which again is trying to allow you the ability of another budget season to talk about with the particular positions and all that, but trying to get at the same time frame getting somebody on board so that we can get back to some sense of normalcy with regard to reporting and checks and balances, et cetera.
Herb, you're thinking a shared interim position to supplement Becky's work in a nutshell?
If I can find
If you can find that.
if I can find a community or two that's willing to deal with that, I would probably come back to you and say, here's a direction that we can go in, which may short circuit an interim, but also until that happens, I can be on a dual course to trying to put together proposal stuff to send out that would be a solicitations advertising for trying to find an interim solution, if that
So,
makes sense.
I'm seeing sort of three different tracks. So there needs to be immediate attention in addition to what Becky does. So I'm thinking that's a consultant. And then there's the idea of sharing, which is sort of, innovative, but takes a little time to research. And then there's just the idea of having a finance director who's interim so we can try the person out and then possibly hire into the future. Are those the three that we're talking about?
That makes sense, except that the first one that you mentioned with regard to consultant type stuff, as long as I have Becky on board, I can work with Cynthia on a short-term basis to get through the types of things. For instance, we're in the middle of the audit right now, trying to get through that process, and she's helpful.
So Cynthia really is a consultant. So you've got that model in place.
Exactly.
So it's how to move beyond that,
right.
And whether we can get a shared person or whether we can get a good solid interim person that we could try out.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not ruling out at all what John Langus suggested, talked about earlier with regard to reaching out to Dartmouth and that if there's a specific office or entity there that does this kind of stuff. Because absolutely, if there's someone there, would love to grab onto that.
In terms of getting through to May 30th, if it turned out that it was Becky and Cynthia for that huge amount of time, how would you feel about that for those months? Because that's a long time.
It's not ideal at all.
Right.
And what I'm trying to do is just first get point A done, which I think you all agree on, which is Becky, and then point B is to keep that focus on trying to get a finance director type in, whether that's interim or permanent. I got to keep plugging away at that.
So I think that Becky and Cynthia are kind of survival mode. And you could do it, but it's not ideal. And you're trying to,
Right. It's not ideal. We're dealing with it, but I can tell you that Becky is extremely overwhelmed right now. But I mean, this is clearly the busiest time of year because we got all of the April 15th stuff overlapped now because of the delays in the homestead declaration and the income tax filing with the first tax installment coming in. So
yes.
This is the time where I've even told Miranda to go downstairs and help Becky with answering the phones and stuff over the last week or so when things were getting pretty rough.
Is she going to be able to handle that?
Roger, did you
really
have,
well handles the stuff that's going on right now. It's just, there's more going on down there for just one person.
It's overwhelming, yes.
Just a question, Herb, can you send us how much all of this interim has cost us, beginning when we first created this arrangement to the closeout of the fiscal year?
Sorry, repeat. I think you're just looking for what we've spent so far with all this interim situation.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I need to get a sense, like I need to get a sense of what interim and contracted services are costing us for this department.
Okay.
so to wrap up this discussion though, we're going to move to, hopefully I'm going to ask for a motion to allow or to authorize Herb to hire Becky Grammer as a full-time finance assistant. Meanwhile, and I really hope it doesn't take 10 months, we will be looking at an interim finance director, whether it's through Dartmouth, through League of Cities and Towns, through advertisement, and also looking at, Mary, you stated it so well, the 3 tracks.
Do we really need a motion on this? I mean, I think Herb is empowered to hire his people. I thought
There was a
here
motion.
advice.
Oh, there was a motion in the packet, that's all. I don't,
The motion was pretty broad. It was to
Yeah.
endorse the recommendation.
so we don't need to make a motion. We can just say, yes, Herb, we agree with you, hire Becky.
That's
I mean,
true.
I do need a motion for that because it's a change from a part-time to a full-time position. So
All right.
that's all I would need on that. And then we can continue to, I would take from tonight's discussion, continuing to explore the other side of things with advertising and stuff.
With a proposed financial outlay, or what the DPW funds and et cetera, all of that other stuff. So
I'm sorry, Claudette, just to clarify the motion. So we are approving not only the full-time status, but the authorization of the DPW funds for this? To make the hire? Or to make the endorsement?
All I would be doing is basically within the bounds of what I have is telling Larry, sorry, you can't hire that person for this particular year. And then when we go through and do, the understanding is that I'm going to steal from Peter to give to Paul with regard to that.
And there's just one final time with apologies, Claudette. And there's no other department that you would consider taking from at this time.
You asking me that?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it would just be that targeted position and within the bounds of the existing finance department's budget.
So is there someone willing to make a motion? If not, I will move to authorize Herb Durfee to hire Becky Grammer as a full-time finance officer or finance assistant with the salary range that was presented in the memo included in tonight's packet.
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none.
There's
Mary, how do you?
a public hand up. I don't know if that's relevant, Claudette.
Okay, who?
Pam Smith has her hand up.
Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, typically there's a fee when you convert someone from a temp to a new hire. Is there going to be any fee from account temps for this conversion?
No, we've already well surpassed the
The threshold.
the threshold of the curve or whatever it is, correct?
Okay, I thought we might have, but I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, they're making pure profit off of us right now. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Any other comments? The motion was made and seconded. Roll call, Mary, how do you vote?
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and Claudette's a yes.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And hopefully at the very latest, the first meeting in September, we can have hopefully before that, but if not, we can have some kind of update on an interim position or plans going forward from there.
I'll keep you posted.
All right, moving on to our next item, the town meeting results. So again, this is what I would propose. Just let me backtrack. The results of the vote on this at the special town meeting with the EEI contract, that proposal was voted down, I would say pretty overwhelmingly. So we as a board need to come up with next steps. And I would propose not to do that tonight, but to add it to our next agenda so that we can have some discussion about where we go. We're almost back, like we're back to square one, except for now coronavirus is there, and the ventilation is probably even more critical. Mary?
I've been thinking about it a little bit. I don't want to talk about it at length, but what I appreciate about the vote, it's very, very clear. Whereas when in the spring, when it was passed, I think there was, it was so even that it caused a lot of controversy in town. And I think when we make a big move like this, it's better if the town either pretty much wants it or is pretty decisive that they don't. So I thought it was actually very good for clarity to have the vote come down that way. I'm also wondering whether we need to think about whether we'll have to think about the resolution that was made for the 5% reduction in a different way of how we would achieve that, or if we need to actually rescind it, or whether we need to think about just besides the energy efficiency portion of renovating Tracy Hall, just a longer term view of Tracy Hall and what other needs would also be incorporated into keeping it up to date, say over the next 5 to 10 years. So it's really opened up a lot of my thought process and made me think in some different directions. So I'll just say that. And I think you're right, we will need to think in a new way. And I don't think we can come up with anything too brilliant tonight. But, this is an opportunity to think a little differently about it. I think the energy, the climate issues are not going away. They still need to be dealt with, but we might need to just think about it differently, how we do it. So I'll say that.
Oh, John, you had a comment?
Yeah, I agree. This isn't the night to take actions. I think we should start talking about the result by congratulating the people that won offices yesterday. As far as Article 1 goes, I think I would say personally that, my main reflection is that the select board, very much me included, completely dropped the ball as far as leadership goes on this. We had a majority of the board. I'm not sure whether we had unanimity, but we had a majority of the board that supported this article. And we have taken an interpretation that some bit of Vermont law means that we have a gag order on us when things come up in town meeting. And I think that is a bad interpretation of the law. We completely left the Energy Committee on their own to provide information about the about the vote, and private citizens to make the arguments for something that we had endorsed as a board. So I'm disappointed at how we exercise leadership in that. But I'm certainly ready to, dig back in. I'm certainly ready to take everyone who voted against that, especially the 200 and some votes that had been in favor of it before and went against it yesterday. I'm perfectly happy to take those as 100% good faith votes that are people that want to see engagement on this issue, because what is clear is that like 78% of the town voted for the article for a consistent, persistent reduction in fossil fuel. So that was loud, that was clear. If there's disappointment with our first attempt, not our first attempt, I would say the vote to get hybrid police car for our replacement police car was maybe the first one. There might have been another small one. But if this attempt was not viewed as being the best way to go about that, I'm happy to dig back in and think about ways to move this forward again. What I'm certainly not willing to interpret this result as is a second guessing of that very overwhelming and clear statement 2 years ago. So I'm happy to make some suggestions for the next board packet to talk about this in greater detail.
Roger?
Just want to say quickly, I disagree a little bit with that analysis, Mary, only because in between the two votes, there was a global pandemic of unprecedented caliber. So I think that people's, what really factored into people's vote, of course, is a giant fear of uncertainty and both real and perceived austerity. And nobody necessarily wants to take on a major project during such uncertain times. So what I know is that before a pandemic, it passed with a slight majority. And then after the pandemic, it failed by a larger majority. Like, that is my analysis. The things that haven't changed, of course, is that we have a 25-year-old boiler. The climate crisis hasn't changed. If anything, we are now understanding its links between public health and safety. And obviously, as Claudette alluded to, ventilation is a huge consideration. I think what the crisis or the COVID has done for us is really sort of gave us a clearer idea of what capital budgeting will be. I think John is absolutely right. We dropped the ball on leadership. This was an energy, the Energy Committee project. The Energy Committee brought this project to us as an energy project, but this is a capital budgeting issue. And this board and this town, as we've talked about and others have critiqued us appropriately, we are behind on capital budgeting and our thinking. And there's not a world in which when you're developing a 5 or 10-year capital budgeting campaign, Tracy Hall is not a giant factor. So, I mean, I think that is what I feel really strongly about. I think I'm really also, I appreciate all the state context, as like Doug Wilberding put into the chat. Norwich is very unique in particular with our resources and the capital budgeting that we need to do. I think it's time you look at our community and possibly face some truths about what we can and cannot afford to do. So that has been my talk. And we're all talking about it now. So as per your request, I think you're right. We should really dive into this with the lens of capital budgeting, where we can show much stronger leadership.
Mary?
Since my name was mentioned, I do think the pandemic has had an effect. It's the fear factor, and it's well justified. And the other factor that people are concerned about, of course, is the Marion Cross septic situation. So I think, between all of the factors, it just isn't the time. It might have, if we hadn't had the revote, maybe we would be, listening to deafening sounds from the driveway right now. It didn't come together. I think we can we can regroup and figure out how to reduce energy. It may be something similar to this. It might be something really different. But we might have to think kind of outside of the box.
The Marion Cross septic problem is certainly as old as I am. So I will offer that for you.
Okay.
So does the board want to take this up? What our next steps are in some detail at our next meeting?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay. So we will add the Tracy Hall. Essentially, I'm going to keep it focused right now on Tracy Hall and the HVAC. So heating,
With
ventilation.
all due respect, Madam Chair, I think I'd prefer that the agenda be much broader than that it be a revisiting of how the select board thinks that we should approach the direction, the clear direction we got from our voters to reduce fossil fuel emissions.
I agree.
And I think that all of the something, if we have a feeling about how that would be a good way to move forward on that, so that we can debate it and take action on it at the next meeting.
Okay. I'm open to that.
I would argue that we should get away from that and broaden our thinking to thinking about it as a capital project with an energy mandate. But you know, I think either way we'll get at what we need to talk about, right?
Yep, we will.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the fee schedule update. Or I see Jack Cushman with his hand up. I'm telling you guys, we're not gonna prolong this as a agenda item. We will be discussing it at our next agenda. So keep that in mind when.
Typically, as a process, tell citizens that they can't make public comments.
I didn't say that, John. And my final point was going to be keep that in mind when you make your comment. So I saw Jack with his hand up and then Stuart with his hand up. Go ahead, Jack. You're muted.
Thank you. And I will be brief, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I just would urge you all, as you don't overread what the vote intended, what the vote did was to refuse to authorize a bond issue. Secondly, I do hope that you'll bear in mind that at a national level, there's a great deal of movement towards stimulus funding, federal and state support for infrastructure projects, green jobs, and that as we rethink this in the months ahead, we be sure that we're on our toes to obtain support from higher levels of government for expenditures that our town feels are beyond our local capacities. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Stuart, you had your hand up.
Stuart Richards, 82 Elm Street. My comment, and I'll limit it, you know, speculating as to why people voted the way they did is perhaps not as helpful as understanding how overwhelming the vote was. And Jack is correct. There were a lot of problems with the bond as it was proposed, and the public recognized that. So it's back to the drawing board on this particular project. And I don't say that this project can't go forward, and I'm speaking only for myself. There isn't any reason why the project can't be revisited and why it can't be restructured, and it can't be done in a way that will benefit the town and benefit all those people who are concerned. So, and I hope you will take it up, and I hope the next time you take it up, it will be possible for you to schedule it early in your meeting so that people don't have to wait around for 2 hours to make a very limited half-minute comment. Thank you.
If there are no other comments, I'm going to move us forward. So thank you. Now we're going to the fee schedule. There was a draft of the fee schedule in our packet. This is the culmination of work that Herb started. I added comments to Bree participated in, and looking for select board questions, comments. Mary?
I'm fine with the fee structures. I was thinking about, I think you had written a comment, Claudette, about how at DPW, many of the fees are based on volume and how it is, you know, somewhat imprecise to base the fees on volume. It's a sort of a judgment call, and wouldn't it be better if we could do it by weight? So as a long-term thought, I have always liked at Hartford where you have a scale where you can drive on and off, and then you could do it by weight, but that would be an expense, you know, to buy a scale and to install it and everything. But just as a long-term thing, if there is concern about volume, then moving to weight, we could consider that as, you know, a thought for the future if we wanted to be more precise.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when we first started collecting C&D waste, there was a scale discussion, and they're expensive.
Yes, they are.
Whether or not we should stop accepting is another question.
Yeah, and that I don't agree with. I think that people do appreciate the service. They appreciate being able to have that capability in town. So.
Yeah. Any other select board comments or questions? Herb, I just had, since I'm not seeing any select board, I had a couple of questions. Your proposed fee schedule for the pavilion rental was a little bit different than Bree's. So I think yours have, I can't remember. I can pull up the sheet for the dollar amounts, but I know they were different. So if we could just get those.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to clarify that because I thought maybe I just pushed the wrong button or something, but I'll clarify.
And then my other question is that there were no, I saw your worksheet for the gym, for the Tracy Hall gym, but that didn't, that was a worksheet for the man hours. There were no fees in there for the actual gym rental.
So yes, it was in there, but it's hard to, sorry, I'm just trying to get there to my sheet. So basically, the actual rental of the gym based on the existing actuals that we have, when you factor what all of the heat, electricity, water usage, alarm monitoring is for Tracy Hall, with 10,300 square feet, that's about $26,250. And if you prorate that just for the gym, where that's about 3,000, just over 3,000 square feet, and you bring that down to what it comes out to be per day, it's only about $21 a day that the gym deals with utilities and all that sort of stuff with regard to that. So looking at the fee schedule, it basically would be the $21 for the gym for the day. And then it's the labor costs that come in. And then if they had, and then sort of the add-ons would be if they wanted to have chairs or tables set up, if we need to do extra, we would have a deposit situation for extra cleaning and any damage deposit. So if they wanted to, if someone was using a box light or something like that, that we would have a deposit for that. And then the flooring is the, besides labor, is the big cost as well, putting that up and down. And so that's, and those particular costs that are in there. So frankly, the actual, you know, electricity, water usage type things, heat things are not the big generators of trying to recover the cost for the building itself. It really boils down to the flooring and then the staff involved with regard to the cost of Tracy Hall is the custodial staff and the buildings and ground staff that get as part of their regular day of cleaning, say, bathrooms, cleaning the gym floor, all that sort of stuff.
So is this in reference to, we had discussions about the farmer's market, people leaving the doors open. So that would account for your heating analysis, does take that into account. And you're saying it's not that much.
I'm taking the actual costs from that. Now, when they're holding the door open, overall, one could say, well, Herb, you've looked at Tracy Hall as a whole, so that's in there. Maybe for those time frames, they're actually, you know, wasting energy and electricity and all that by doing that. But just in terms of the overall actual numbers for Tracy Hall, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that we can't say we're going to, you know, 21 is paltry, Herb, we should just do a minimum $50. I don't, that's not a big, huge issue. What I was trying to do was to show what the actual costs were, factor that out on a per daily basis, including for the labor that relates for the day, and then the add-ons with regard to chairs, tables, flooring or no floor, you know, the put down the flooring, and whether we need extra cleaning or not. So it's just showing that Tracy Hall is more personnel based in terms of trying to recover our costs than facility based.
Roger?
How often is are these costs waived for folks, would you say?
Basically, our policy has, we raise basically between $6,000 and $7,000 a year in revenue. We basically, if it's a town related thing, very often we will waive, you know, the rental fees. If it's a nonprofit, they kind of get a half fee. But with regard to the flooring, we always charge the flooring the way that we have it. No one gets away from the flooring costs like the farmer's market, no matter if it was you know, the women's club pays for flooring as a, for instance, because it's too much labor and all that sort of stuff involved. But we're clearly not covering our costs, which is why I went into this to sort of figure out what the total cost is. And then, but clearly some events are more impactful on Tracy Hall, like the farmer's market, than somebody else that's just coming in and wanting to use the stage for something that's you know, pretty low key. Yeah.
So to get back those costs, I didn't really analyze that part, but if we did bump up the basic rate to $50, it would take some of it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just trying to show you the considerations that are there and show you that it was more personnel based, again, rather than facility based in terms of the use of this particular building. So what I am trying to steer you toward charging fees that are based on the labor involved in taking care of the building, not just the what we think is heat and electricity and those things.
I think too, in thinking about fees, you know, sort of philosophically, is it to cover the costs or is it to make a little more that you put somewhere? And I'm assuming that we just want to cover the costs and not the future costs. For instance, if we wanted to put some money into Tracy Hall, but just sort of the normal operating costs of having people use the building. Is that our philosophy? I'm assuming it is, but.
Two things I'm trying to do is, one, be more being cognizant of what Claudette raised a couple years ago in trying to find other sources of revenue that are non-property tax based. So this whole sort of fee structure evolved out of that to say, where are we at and where might we be that we might see some additional revenue that would minimize impact on the property tax. So that's what this fee stuff is intended to start with regard to that. And then the other half of that is to say, it's reasonable when we look at things, it's reasonable to expect that we should be charging a little bit more for what happens at Tracy Hall and some other areas that's throughout the fee bill. We're not trying to make money, but we're trying to recognize that that the use of this building for folks that are not part of the governmental aspect of this building, they have more impact on this building. It's reasonable to think that they should help contribute toward the impact of that cost, which in this particular case is primarily personnel based and in the care of the building.
Claudette, what do you think about, now that you had a chance to look at the fee structure, what do you think of it as a revenue source in general? Like, was that your intention, or are we really talking about just trying to cover our basic maintenance costs when we have people use the facilities, or what?
My personal bias is that it should be generating some level of revenue for for non-town users. Because there's the wear and tear on the building, as well as the manpower, woman power piece of it. I think it should generate some form of revenue. Am I thinking that we're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars? No. But I think we should do more than just cover our costs.
What would a reasonable markup be? Like, how do you figure that?
What are other towns charging for a typical space, or other, even if they're not towns? What's the Wilder Church? That church on the corner of Route 5. What does that rental fee look like? And I think $21 a day for Tracy Hall Gym is quite frankly ridiculously low. So, but that's me.
Well, I think most uses do involve the floor, so it's a little more because the floor does need to be protected. But what do you think with that $21, if you didn't have to have the floor covering, what do you think would be reasonable? Like 50, 100? 100 to me seems high.
I think it should be based on the others, hourly, half day, whatever. And frankly, just to move this conversation forward, I like everything but the Tracy Hall Gym fee schedule. Because I don't think it's clean like the others. I think it's a place to start, but and I didn't see any other, like even the rec department, when the memo that Bree sent out, that just had Huntley and the Pavilion. So those are.
So for context, the library charges $100 for 5 hours. And so the first 1 to 2 hours is $25 right there, right? So
say that again, Roger.
For the library, which is, another, governance structure in town, we charge 1 to 2 for the first 2 hours is $25. For 5 hours plus, it's $100. And so that's, but we assume very little cost outside of like whatever is like the utilities, right? But I asked about how often this gets waived because we rarely have a for-profit booking because we're so busy with all of the town entities, and that's our policy to allow that usage, right? And so it's very broad. So I would say, without giving away too many company secrets, when there is an opportunity to find someone who is willing to pay some bones, we charge them, and so I think what it is, it's making a distinction between users, and it's a policy and a form that makes these kinds of distinctions, which I know that Herb is also like, that's part of the work, right? So so it's a for-profit entity. They are charged differently than a local organization or a nonprofit entity, and it covers expenses and generates revenue. That's standard par for the course. I don't know if we need to talk about that at length.
Yeah. Can I ask a question of Herb? How often does the gym get rented out to others, other than town meetings and events?
The gym itself is mostly utilized by recreation-based programs and programs that have been around for a long time, like the karate or the taekwondo, the fencing, and I'm drawing a blank on the other, yoga, and then everything. But the gym is used very regularly, but it's mostly rec program related.
Okay. So that's already part of what our mission is to do, is to support the rec activities.
Right, and the fees that rec charges for their particular programs are intended to cover the cost of running the particular program. So if there's an instructor cost, the fee will be wrapped in. The fee to participate wraps in the cost of paying for that instructor, as a for instance. And I just want to make sure that Claudette understands that I'm not looking to just have Tracy Hall gym be rented out at $20. It's $20 plus if we decide that it's an hour's worth of cleaning from that standpoint, then you add in the custodial pay on top of that. So it's probably, at least $50 to use it. So it's not, so that's the whole point is showing, the analysis was showing that the impact to the town is personnel based, not facility based, in terms of what cost you're trying to recoup or pay for. So yes, it may be disappointing to see that the Tracy Hall costs aren't the big bulk of it, but the idea is not to just charge based on the actual facility itself, but the labor that's involved with taking care of the facility.
John?
I think that's an important point, Herb. I mean, I think in general, I would say that this is something that we like to make available to the town to do things in, right? It's not a facility that we built to make money for the other things the town does. This is one of the things the town does. So I think any sort of fee structure that credibly offsets the actual running cost of facilitating that is a great place to peg that fee, and that we shouldn't be looking at it as a place to generate extra income to, say, offset tax revenue. It's a town-owned facility that we should make available for town activities, I think.
Policy before schedule, perhaps. Cheryl has her hand up, Claudette.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I just wanted to say for Rob's benefit that though these are rec-related programs, they're not the ordinary rec programs. These are things that are instructor-based, and that these instructors are charging a fee for their program at a rate that they have set, and then we assess them a fee for, we pay them a portion of their fee for using the facility. So when we talk about taekwondo or some of those types of things, there's also the Saturday night dances that take place at Tracy Hall. And those are rentals that I think go through Herb, not through the rec program. And I think some of the concern in the past has been that these activities get very warm inside the facility and the doors are open and all the heat is going outside when, you know, there's very active activities going on inside of the Tracy Hall building. So there's that piece to it that you want to make sure you incorporate into your fee structure.
One of the questions I would have is, have we invited the instructors to utilize the facility, or have they approached us, or did we encourage them initially and now they're seeing it as a revenue stream? And the dance getting overheated and opening up the doors to cool it down sort of offsets the fact that we're throwing heat out the door that was generated by the people in the room. But I understand the concern.
Well, I won't speak on Herb's behalf, but my historical knowledge is that these are groups that wish to use the facility and have approached us to set up a contractual arrangement to use the facility.
Herb, can you comment on that? How many is that happening? Like,
I don't have the specific data that says this or that in terms of this number of groups and stuff, but there's a whole litany of folks that want to use the facility, like the dance groups that come in and they schedule it through my office. When there's an opening, we go through a rental agreement with them to determine if they need the floor or not, and tables, chairs, etc. And then there are clearly groups that are rec program sanctioned, and that can come about with an individual that could approach the rec department to say, hey, I'm a specialist in this and I would love to offer something, and we can make that a rec program, or it could be something that we design ourselves and start to solicit from that standpoint. In either case, the fees that are set up for the rec program, again, are geared toward paying for the cost of offering that. If those fees need to be, restructured to deal with more some of the facility costs or the labor costs with regard to Tracy Hall, I get it. For those groups that approach or just sign up, again, this plays in terms of what you have in front of you. I just can't give you is it 1/3 of the total that are just people that walk in off the street and 2/3 rec programs. I can't give you that.
When you mention rec programs, are you talking town-sponsored rec programs or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I want to just make that very clear distinction.
Yeah, and there are some other rec programs like pickleball originally was its own function. There was a men's basketball pickup group that came in that's not related to the rec department. So there are recreational based activities that occur in there that are not town programs.
If I could make a suggestion, I would think in terms that if it's not a town instigated event, those expenses marked up 20% is not at all unreasonable. It gives us money that would go towards capital improvement, so long-term improvements, and would still allow for an affordable meeting space for a variety of community events.
Sure.
Sounds reasonable.
Anybody
to
think?
me.
Sounds good.
For you guys
I
to
can live with
vote?
that. Is everybody okay with that? Is anyone willing to make a motion?
Well,
Madam Chair, sorry, before you make a motion, I hate to do that, but just a couple clarifications, at least in terms of the overall thing for those. If you make a motion tonight on the fee schedule, there are a couple things that are actually ordinance-based. So your motion should not include those ordinance-based things, which would be the alarms under the police alarm response fees, as well as the parking fine and the dog fines, because those are all, again, those are ordinance-based and you have to amend your ordinance in order to do that. And then Chief Frank just added some clarity on one of her items. The police VIN check fee should be 0 for residents and 20 for non-residents. So right now it just says $20.
if I could make clear, my suggestion for the 20% markup was for thinking in terms of facilities rental specifically, whether it's courts or Huntley Field or Tracy Hall, the bandstand, etc. 20% over the cost of that.
For non-town.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody willing to try to make that motion?
Who's good? Yeah.
Mary, you're muted.
Could we move it as amended and not specifically say, or should we actually say everything?
I think to be clear, we should probably say everything.
Just everything. Okay, I will try to do it. I move to adopt the 2020 Norwich, Vermont fee schedule as presented, except for ordinance-based fees. And as to the charge for VIN numbers, $0 for residents, $20 for non-residents, and with a 20% markup for facilities rental. Did I get everything?
That are non-town based.
That are non-town based.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll roll call. Mary?
Yes?
Roger?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So thank you, Herb, for that work.
Thank you.
We're now on to a break. So, and just after the break, Roger will be hosting. I'm going to step aside for a bit.
Okay. 10 minutes?
10-minute break, and then I'm stepping out.
Oh, okay.
So it's 8:58. We're resuming the meeting. Claudette Brochu, chair, stepped away. So I am resuming the meeting as vice chair. This will be exciting for us all. So we're beginning, the next item on the agenda is the DPW administrative assistant. I believe there is, correct me if I'm wrong, a motion to authorize this. There's materials, the job description and other supporting materials in the packet. Does anyone have any questions about these materials? Go ahead, Mary.
The motion is to prohibit the town manager from hiring. I noticed.
So do we see
Thank
very smart of Herb. So if we have no reason to prohibit it, I think that would actually frame our discussion. Does anyone see a reason to prohibit the hiring of the DPW administrative assistant, and any discussion around that question?
I think you should just go ahead and hire the part-time assistant. It's fine with me. So
I think if Claudette would hear, she would want to have a discussion about, just because she's very conscious about this particular moment and during the pandemic. and making sure that this is the best thing we can be doing at this time. But I think the need has been strongly communicated in our prior budget seasons. And so I see no reason to prohibit, right? She wanted this on the agenda, I believe. So that's why I wanted to honor that a little bit. Okay.
Now, does this mean that if none of us are prohibiting this, that Herb will finally feel comfortable doing it?
That's right.
I hope so.
I'm comfortable doing it no matter what, but I purposely held off because of the COVID stuff. That's all. So
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think considering that the former DPW had, his wife took care of a lot of these administrative duties, I think it's only fair for Larry to have this support. So I hope you go out and hire an assistant soon, personally.
Great. Let's, any public comment? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Hello, can you hear me?
And Linda. Do you have a public comment?
For some reason, you guys haven't been acknowledging me at all for raising my hand or unmuting. So I was wondering what was going on.
I have not seen your *9 hand. So
okay, I put it up twice. I wanted to talk on the fee schedule, but I couldn't get acknowledged. So I was hoping I could get back in the meeting and be acknowledged that I'm here. And I'll pass on my comment, I guess, to Herb about the fee schedule, and let you allow me to bring it up after you're done this subject.
We have moved on from that agenda item, and I believe you, in your response, you indicated that you could touch base with Herb on that. So if that's the case, I would thank you to do that, if that's possible. Okay.
That's fine. I just hope you can see my hand again, or if I can unmute.
Great. It's *9, and I apologize if you were doing that.
I see you.
I'm gonna mute you. Okay, let's move on. So the next item on the agenda is the net metering agreement between the town and Soliflect. So I think just as a process for this agenda item, I don't see us having any call for a decision at the time. I think the best use of our time for this agenda item is to frame the issue for the general public and then make a recommendation on the process. And obviously there are lots of folks in the audience who may wish to speak to it. Herb has his hand up, John has his hand up, my goodness. Okay, so John, what is your comment?
I just want to start by acknowledging, so there have been questions raised about whether I have a conflict of interest in this matter. Rob Adams is the Chief Operating Officer at Soliflect. He's one of my closest friends. He's a business partner of mine. If this discussion becomes something that there's an action for, I will certainly recuse myself if that action has any sort of financial implication for Soliflect and by extension Rob. Not seeing any before us at the moment. I would hope that my participation would be useful and welcome, given that I write these agreements for a living, and so might have some insight into some of the issues involved with them.
Absolutely, and it is, I don't believe this agenda item calls for any action. I believe it's to frame and seek further clarity for possible action in the future, but Herb has his hand up, so I would like to ask if he'd speak.
So just quickly, I received an email a few days ago from Bill Bender at Soliflect, just giving us an update with regard to our 2003 agreement. So I'm just going to quickly read the email. It's pretty short, Roger.
Yeah, that's fine. I would actually like to just back up a little bit, Herb, and I would actually like to define for the record and for the general public, what is a net metering agreement? Why is it that this particular agreement is being brought to the board's attention at this moment? And then what is it that the board or the committees that work on energy related things should be doing in the future? So Herb, I think you might be, or John, it might be best to begin with what is a net metering agreement and why is it that we are hearing about this one right now, with the acknowledgement that this was brought to our attention by a citizen. So,
Expert.
I'm happy to speak to that if you'd like. I do note, without wanting to draw her out and throw her under the bus, that Linda Gray is here, who's the chair of our energy committee. But so a net metering agreement is specifically to allow your meter to run backwards when you're doing a solar project. So you produce power from the solar array, and it gets credited by the utility to the meters of the people that own the array or people with an agreement with those owners. So those things can be very simple, where you have it on your house and you own it, or they can be quite complicated. The biggest reason they become complicated is that these projects tend to be driven by the tax credit that's attached to them. And if you're a public entity, like a town or a school, you don't have any tax liability. So you either give up that tax credit and own the system yourself, or you participate through a power purchase agreement or net metering credit agreement, something like that, with someone who can take that tax credit and then will sell you those credits. So those credits appear on your bill, just like if you owned the system, and they offset your energy usage. So that is the basic type of agreement that we have. The town has with Solaflect. The questions that have come up have
great.
to do with the fact.
I actually interrupted you a little
Sure.
bit. Okay, so that's great. So we've now defined what a net solar agreement is, and so can you now just answer? So why? Can you talk about the circumstances of why we entered into this, or how we came about entering into this agreement? Maybe Linda Gray can speak to it. Then I want to get to what you were about to do, if that's okay. Go ahead, Linda. What is the history about this particular net metering agreement? How did it come about for the town of Norwich?
Thank you. So the background is that, and I think it was back around 2011 and 2012, the Energy Committee had been very active, and we had attempted to develop a town-owned solar project. Because, as John mentioned, the town cannot take advantage of the tax incentives that are available for investment. It was kind of complicated, and the Finance Committee at the time was not supportive of it, and so that did not work. And then in order to, as an alternative, as a way for the town to be involved with solar, doing a power purchase agreement was a readily workable alternative, because that did not involve any town taxes. It did not involve any risk to the town of being the equipment owner. The town would just enter into an agreement to receive net metering credits on its bill, and in exchange for that, it would pay a discounted rate for that electricity to the developer. So that's the essence of it. There's no risk to the town. The town just gets a slight discount on its bill. And I might say, for example, Danowitz has done a similar thing, and Dan's comment when he was introduced the idea is like, oh, what's to lose with this? You know, who wouldn't want to do this? And so basically, that's how it works. So and Neil Fulton, I see, is on the line. He was town manager at the time. We went through a process, and it ended up interviewing with 3 different developers, and we ended up choosing Solaflect, in large part because Solaflect was crystal clear that they would not be selling the renewable energy credits from their projects. And that was something that we were crystal clear that we wanted, because that meant that the solar electricity that we were buying was in fact solar, and nobody else had bought the rights for those renewable attributes. Not to get involved in the weeds of that concept. So that's the background, and I'll stop there.
No, thank you for that. And so now, why are we hearing, I see, member, I'm going to leave public comments to the end because it's very important that we trace this history at this point. So my next question then is, why are we hearing about this contract now? I imagine it's unusual to hear about these contracts. So can maybe Linda can speak to this, and then maybe we're getting towards Herb with his updated email. And I recognize the writers of those email might be in the audience. So why are we hearing about this agreement now?
Thank you. And my summary of that is that the agreement as initially entered into by the town was one in which it specified that there would be an opportunity at the 8th anniversary, which is coming up in 2022, an opportunity for the town, if it was interested, to purchase panels instead of just simply buying power from it at a discount. And so, and there would be every couple of years further opportunities to do that. And so that was something that I had on my general radar to pay attention to and get into understanding what fair market value might be. It was, from my perspective, I never thought that it was a guaranteed thing that the town would in fact be interested in doing that, but it was certainly something we'd want to check out. And then I think as it happens, we have learned that Solaflect had to change the financing for their project. And so that change ended up eliminating this purchase opportunity. So that's the key difference. And it, from my perspective, it may not have any practical implication for us, but it's a difference.
Okay, great. So that is what has not gone according to plan, so to speak. Is that what I'm understanding? Linda? Yes, okay. So John has his hand up, and then go ahead. I appreciate everyone's with this exercise.
I think that's correct. But there was a second aspect that was raised about the project, which is where the actual solar array is. So my understanding, this contract was signed 7 days after I moved to Norwich. My understanding, though, is that, and the contract states that the facility for the contract was going to be in Norwich, up on Route 5, and there were problems with the development of that site, so that couldn't move forward. And so the site was changed, and the solar energy now comes from a different solar project, a different array that Solaflect developed. It's in the town of Lunenburg. So those are two pieces of the contract that no longer reflect reality.
Okay, that's great. And these were brought to our attention by Doug Wilberding. Is that right in that memo? Okay, yep. Great. Go ahead, Linda.
The other thing with regard to the location of the panels, even though the contract wasn't changed to reflect that, but that change of where the panels were located was known to me, and I believe known to Neil when he was town manager. So that was understood by us. That is not a surprise. That's known.
Okay, great. So so this is great. So now the two problems, so to speak, are that contractually the facility is different where the parcels are located, and then the financing, the circumstances of the financing is such that it would be currently difficult or impossible to purchase the solar array as the town. Is that right? The second part? Yes, that's what I'm hearing. Okay, great. Now it sounds like Herb has an update. Herb, do you have an email that speaks to those two problems?
I just have an email indicating from Bill Bender that based on the 2013 agreement that you have in your packet, that the town's going to be receiving additional net metering credits from the Lunenburg solar field. The process that was initiated in the fall of 2019 got significantly delayed due to the COVID pandemic, but they've added the additional trackers to the field, and they're finally commissioned, and that this adds 24,000 kilowatt hours per year of additional net metering credits that the town receives from the field. So this reduces the total expenditure by 7.1% compared to the Green Mountain Power bill for these credits.
So what does that mean for us? I don't understand what that means.
Bill Bender's here to answer that question.
Great. Bill Bender from Solaflect, can you provide a layman's understanding of the more technical email that Herb read for us?
Well, the agreement or the core of the agreement, and I think Linda and Neil can anything wrong, but I think can agree with this, was that the town saved 7.1% on their standard electric bill from anything that comes from the solar field, as well as this solar is solar in which the renewable energy credits are retired. So it is truly solar compared to a lot of the commercial solar fields in the state where the renewable energy credits are actually sold out of state, in which case it technically is no longer really solar. So the town is saving when it does get the credit, it saves 7.1% compared to what it would be paying to Green Mountain Power. And it is getting 100% of that is truly solar with retired renewable energy credits.
Okay, but does that address any of the two problems that we have identified in the contract? So the problems that we're trying to talk about.
I think
Bill, I believe you're trying to speak. I can't hear you. Okay, well, I will ask John and Linda, who've been previously speaking. You know, we've identified these problems at the. I can't. So I don't have an analysis of that comment, basically. So so the problems that we have identified is the facility has changed where the parcel is located and the financing is different. And so I'm trying to understand how the new information is that we've gotten can answer that. So who can help us with that? Linda has her hand up.
Well, I think I understand the email that Herb read off, and it does not really, it does not comment about the contract at all. So it's just about the, you know, the power assigned to the town, the net meter credits assigned to the town. So I think there is still, like, I would suggest from my perspective, the fact that that they're from Bill's information, he's indicated that there is no longer an opportunity for the town to potentially purchase panels. And if that's true, you know, I think that like he and Herb ought to just sit down and talk over, and you know, an amended contract can be worked out. But if there with certain other changes, if it's still possible for the town to do a purchase, we'd like to know that, and then we can begin investigating what the purchase would be at fair market value, which is not defined specifically in any dollar amount. So that would have to be investigated and agreed upon. So I think there's room for discussion. I don't think that it probably should happen at select board level, but more at the town manager level.
And as I said, I'm just trying to frame the problem, and so it's very clear that while I appreciate hearing that email and hearing from Bill Bender, it doesn't sound like the problems that have been raised have answers right now for them. So I actually would like to close this up and move on to select board comment and then public comment if we don't have any other further questions to go for. And then I think we might want to decide on a process or whether we want to affirm, as Linda suggests, to have Herb Durfee continue communications or what have you. So are there any further select board comments before I take public comments? Okay, Linda Cook has, oh, go ahead, Mary.
I just think I do like the idea of Bill Bender sitting down with Herb. I don't like the idea that the contract is just changed. It just seems changed arbitrarily. I do like the benefit of what we're getting from the solar, and I like the retired recs, but I don't like this idea that suddenly the contract is different. So
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Certainly the facts on the ground are superseding this contract, right? Which is, it's not a great practice for sure. So Linda Cook had her hand up for a while, and so I'll get to Linda's comment, and then Doug Wilberdine had a question, I think. So go ahead, I'm unmuting you, Linda.
Thank you. Yes, the select board minutes dated August 28, 2013. Agenda item number 6 was when this initially was discussed with Solar Reflect Energy about the net metering contract. And as far as going forward, I'm not sure discussions that were only had between Neil and Bender, I don't know that it came back to the board for any action, because the action at that time was a 3-vote yes by Ashley Childs and Flanders to take the contract. And there were concerns from Cook and Moran, and voted no not to take the contract because of that. I just thought I'd go back to the 1 minutes I can find on this project.
So Linda, just to be clear, so Linda, your question is, I'm not sure I really understand your point. So you're saying that it was brought to the board, or you're just reminding us of that history?
It was brought there, but I could not find follow-up information about this being tracked as far as the Lunenburg change and that from the original contract.
I see what you're saying. So you're in part responding to Linda's point that Neil and Linda were aware of this, even though the contract says something different. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to Doug Wilberdine's public comment.
Thanks, Roger. I guess just a point of clarification. I think the solar panels in question are in 2 physical locations. Bill Bender can probably qualify this, but supposedly it's St. Johnsbury and Lunenburg. There's 2 solar fields that SolarFlex has in Lunenburg that were delivered at different times. One has 36 solar arrays. This agreement, I believe, states 39. And I believe Bill stated in his email that the solar panels in question, it's not an issue of financing, Roger, just so you understand. It's an issue that these panels are owned by somebody else that's in a cooperative field with other consumers that own them. So I guess I would say find out exactly where they are. I think it's more than one town. And if it's just one town, there's 2 physical locations in Lunenburg. And then also understand that it's really not a financing issue. It's a cooperative field that third-party consumers own the panels. So really the gist of it is the purchase option is voided because other people own the panels.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Would any one like to speak to that public comment? Okay. I think I don't think we necessarily need a motion. I think I guess my question is there a move by consensus to ask Herb to begin to investigate this further? I confess to, I'm not sure what the step forward would be. I don't know what he's necessarily investigating. So John has his hand up. Maybe he can provide clarity.
So they're sort of qualitatively different issues. Well, I think that I could be wrong. So the issue of where these panels sit is absent. So would typically just be fixed by an amendment to fix that exhibit, unless there was some feeling on the part of the town that it was important to be having that solar come from a field in Norwich. Right. So we could discuss in, giving Herb his direction to, fix this contract, whether we care about that. The second issue is similarly, do we care? Did we care then? Do we care now about the purchase option? So it's de rigueur. It's very typical to have a purchase option in a public project like this for the specific reason that I mentioned about the towns and the schools can't take the tax credit. So you build in a purchase option in case that town or that school would really like to own the array, if only they could have done it with the solar tax credit. So you said, look, if you really want to be in the business of owning solar arrays, we'll take the tax credit for a while after the tax period, which is why the option triggers when it does, after the tax period is run, and you can buy it from us at a fair price. So, I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know if that was an important part of this decision. Do people care about that at the time? Do people care about that now? Do we want to be in the business of owning solar arrays as the town of Norwich? So those are the sort of things that need to be talked about when talking about fixing this contract.
Okay, and some of those are larger questions that I think, yes, we do need to be oriented, but I think for the task at hand, the question would be, I think as Linda articulated, we should direct Herb to find out if the purchase option is still available to us, and then everything that you sort of elucidated.
I don't think that's an issue. There's absolutely nothing that you could purchase because of what Doug said. So
isn't that
both a financing issue and an ownership issue? It's a financing issue that led to a change in the ownership structure. So on one structure, one guy owns the array and he sells you the credits. And so it's easy for him to say, you want to buy it later? Great. Let me know. I'll sell it to you at a fair price. I'll move on and I'll do my next project. The way that this one ended up being structured is that the whole array is owned by multiple small homeowners. And so there's not a functional way where you can just go to 12 Norwich residents and say, oh, the town of Norwich wants to buy, 1/6 of each of your panels. It's just not, it just doesn't work anymore. So it's an impossibility under the current contract. And so the question is then, do we care about that? Is that really important to us?
Are we now not getting what we were contractually owed?
Technically, we do. Yes, we do not have a purchase option for those things. The question is whether we put any value on that.
Okay, Mary has her hand up, and then go ahead, Mary.
I don't put any value in having that purchasing option, and I don't mind that the solar panels are located somewhere else. I do like the benefits of solar energy, and I do like the retired recs. I do not like, I just want to clean up the contract. That's the only change I would want to see, so that it clearly defines, where the electricity is coming from, and that we do not have a purchasing option. So that's the only action I'd like to see.
Okay, and I think that is an excellent directive to our town manager, perhaps. I mean, I do, it sounds like there's nothing really to do about not getting what you're contractually owed, I suppose. So I think Mary's direction to Herb is a good one. Herb, since we are directing you, do you have any thoughts to add? And I do want to move on.
No, I'm pretty clear.
Okay. Cheryl, you have a public comment. Is it to the specific net metering agreement as laid out on the agenda item? Because I suspect I know. Okay, I won't suspect anything. Go ahead. I'll take your public comment. I'm sorry, Cheryl.
Oh, Roger, I'm getting used to you. So I, as a resident of Norwich, Cheryl Lindbergh, 59 Koch Road, always expected that there would be a tracking of the savings. I have never seen a tracking of the savings that we have experienced by going with this program. And I'm not saying we're not, but I don't know that there has been a tracking. I've seen myself sign, or I've seen ACH payments for the SolarFlect for the solar, and I see Green Mountain Power bills that are being paid. So I just am asking the question as to whether the tracking has been done to prove that we're saving money.
And actually, I think that might be, you know, a separate agenda item, but I think Linda and John could possibly answer or address that comment quickly. So we should do that. And then I really would like to move on, even though I see another public comment. We're about 15 minutes over our agenda.
I can address it very quickly. It's a certainty of the contract. That's the beauty of this type of contract, is it's a fixed discount contract. So sometimes you have a fixed price contract that then escalates at a certain percentage every year. That's not our contract. That has a risk of whether you're going to save money relative to what the GMP price is. This contract, which I can tell you, solar system owners hate signing because it places the risk on the owner, is a fixed discount. So the bill credit is this, you pay 92% of that. You have to save money. So the only tracking is, are you being billed for the actual number of kilowatt hours that you've received as a bill credit? We can do that internally. If we haven't been doing that, that's super easy for us to just check.
Linda, go ahead.
And just one very quick note is that I'm looking at my email on the other part of my screen. In January 2019, Solaflect had sent a spreadsheet to try to tabulate all that, and I sent that along to Herb and Miranda, et cetera. And I believe that he included that later for Select Board to have, because there was this question. It's a very good question to like try to enumerate what the savings are. And so Solaflect has been very good at trying to provide us the data. The town has multiple accounts with GMP. It gets a very complex tracking all this stuff and the net meter credits, et cetera. But they try to do a good job on that.
My question is, where has the public seen that information?
I think, thank you for your bonus question, Cheryl. And Linda, I'm going to actually move on to Pam Smith's question. And then I'm moving on. I'm not taking any more public comment, if that's all right. Or any comment. We were over scheduled. Go ahead, Pam.
Yes, a couple of things. One thing that I have heard about this contract is the reason that it's not at the Farrell Farm is that because the insurance company would not insure the location. I'm wondering if Solaflect would be willing to share the letter from the insurance company denying insurance for that location. The other point I would like to make is that if you look at our energy bills over the last 2 years, FY19, we were 23% over budget, and FY20, we were 39% over budget. So if we're getting discounts on this energy that we're buying through solar, why are we so far over budget on our electric bills?
Thank you, Pam. I think you and Cheryl have brought up something separate to this agenda item. I thank you for the public comment, but we addressed it. I think I'm going to write your question down and figure out a way to get that to you. The first question, I would urge you to reach out to the party that the question is applicable to.
I think that's the responsibility of the select board to find out if Solaflect actually has a letter from their insurance company denying coverage.
Thank you for your public comment, Pam. Okay, I'm moving on. Is that okay?
Yep.
Great. Town manager report. The only thing I will say is I greatly valued this new format. I thought it was very instructive. I think also it provides both further detail and also at a glance information. And so if there was a way that you could address some of the elements of your town manager report in that same style, at a glance, but also detailed, that would be great. So it's all yours.
Thanks. So I tried, based on the last discussion that we had jointly, I tried to take what you guys had been looking for and tried to put it into a format. I still see this someday being, the right-hand side of the chart can expand into, say, a Gantt chart, calendar type of update sort of thing. I just haven't gotten there yet from that standpoint, but I've just tried to take the topical areas that seem to be relevant with regard to thinking about strategic planning, which would be the town plan, the fiscally based stuff, obviously my annual review information, the strategic plan stuff that I've talked about, something that would be policy based, meaning select board level, and then other issues that have popped up that I hopefully are more higher level stuff instead of the gory detail, and had tried to put a year value to it in terms of a time to accomplish. And this is based on a calendar year, not a fiscal year. And then a status, or at least trying to get some value of clarification in terms of what the topical item is, and then trying to put a board meeting target to it if there was need to have a board review or action or whatever it might be. So this is a first attempt at this. I'm not saying it's perfect at that point, but I'd love to get feedback from individual or the board as a whole in terms of whether this seems to hit the areas that you want to see me hit on. This is certainly from my perspective as a town manager, where I think where some of the needs are. There's a lot of information in here, but I've tried to tailor it to the particular topical things. And then again, as I move forward, I'm either going to, I'll continue to update the status comment thing, or I'll turn that more or less into the actual moments of action, and then the calendar stuff would appear off to the right in terms of forms of accomplishment, the check off or half done or haven't done anything yet sort of thing. And I don't, is this in the vein of what you guys are looking for in terms of a town report? Obviously, not a manager report. Obviously, this doesn't have the, what did I do this month? And I do think that because this took so much time to put together, I didn't do the other stuff. I think now that the meat of this is put together, there's a tailoring that needs to occur, but I think eventually there'll be a hybrid, in my opinion, of this with some other, say some important things that come forward that you still need a little bit of an understanding of what is going on in my office. And does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And so I actually would like to see if anyone has any specific feedback to you about the new report format. And then if anyone has questions about the content of the report, unless you would like to spend some time specifically pointing some stuff out to us. So do you have stuff that you would like to highlight for us in this report, or should I solicit some select board comment?
I think soliciting the comments, I've just tried to generally talk about it in terms of the topical areas, which to me seem to be the areas that you guys have wanted to focus on with me, at least most recently.
Great. So does anyone have any comments about the format and content of Herb's Town Manager Report? Keeping in mind that he has asked us on several occasions for feedback on his town report. So if not now, then please.
Emails, phone calls, future meetings. I just would like to be able to get input back at some point to make sure that I'm at least meeting the personal improvement plan aspect of what you're looking for. I'm not putting this together just because of that. I'm trying to put it together to be responsive and to try to take that more of that visionary strategic role that I think you expect of me.
Great. I have a question about one of the things you have in your report, unless anyone else has a question. So the union contract, you say in this document, this public document, TBD, and then it's unclear. How without saying too much, is there, have you followed, is there a plan to follow up, or it seems unusual that we would have done all of this work and gotten to the final stages and not have this signed? Is it a matter of, the unique times with COVID, or, is there anything you can speculate publicly on?
I'll just say it's been baffling in trying to understand why we had a handshake agreement and I can't get two signatures to at least move forward on the what we're calling the technical the comprehensive technical agreement, because that drives finishing up the red line version, which is what we need for the ratification process. So I know the union has talked about things. I know that there have been some vacation and sickness things on the union side that may have prohibited the two individuals from being able to talk to each other, but that really should have only been a one to 2 week period of time. And this is, since I told you we had a pinky shake agreement,
Okay.
there's been a lot of time. So I can't, without getting into any more gory detail of confidentiality, that's 2 signatures is what's effectively holding the stuff up at this point. That our side of the 2 signatures are already done.
Okay. I guess we'll just, obviously we would like to move it along. So any inquiries that you can make that are, you know, without rocking the boat would be great.
Yeah, the attorney and I basically are sending out weekly notices. Our attorney has had phone conversations to sort of figure, you know, sort of phone call hallway discussions to figure out what's going on.
Okay, great. So if there's no other questions on the town manager report, there's obviously a lot to get into. It actually asks things of us. So I think maybe a time where we're not over time on our agenda, we could dig into that and address some of it.
Yeah, that would definitely be helpful, because clearly there's some joint effort that we need to deal with, and having some direction from you on some of that will help steer the path that I'd be going down, or not.
Okay, great. Okay, I would then move on to the hazard mitigation plan. Honestly, so I would actually just like to know, has everyone had the opportunity to dig into this document? I know certainly Mary has. You know, I took a look at it this morning. I think there's a lot in there. Has everyone looked at it, and does anyone have any just sort of reactions to this document? Mary, you have your hand up, go ahead.
Just a piece I think was left out was that one of the potential hazards was active shooter incident. It came up during one of the sessions that both the police chief and I advocated for that, and somehow it got not included. So I think one of our decision points tonight was to decide whether or not we thought that was worthy of inclusion. And I think there's a time frame for sort of getting this approved that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a little unusual with the that most of it is based on storm preparedness, but both we introduced this other thread of cybersecurity and also the active shooter as actual hazards that we should be ready for, and that was accepted as a criteria that could be included. So we kind of went with that. It sort of went in 2 streams. One was more natural hazards, and the other were more, I guess you would say, human-caused hazards.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Mary. That I also had that reaction that there were, it focused a lot on, you know, environmental destruction and property damage, and then went into the 3 exceptions were the pandemic,
Yeah.
and, this active shooter training, and then cybersecurity.
Right.
So it did. I didn't make that observation as well. And Herb, just because Mary raises this, can you give us a little bit sense of the administrative things? What is aspects of this? What is expected of us, and what is that time frame, as Mary alluded to?
So basically, the time frame is well, first of all, it's a 5-year plan that you need to update. It needs to be updated very soon. The schedule is going to have the existing one expiring very soon if it hasn't already. FEMA will recognize, if we had, say, a storm event today, because we're so far along, they would recognize it and we would not lose the funding aspect of it. But the value of this plan is being able to get FEMA funding for such things as like the July 1 storm event. this is a critical document. The timing of this is really, we need to get this adopted, if not tonight, at your next meeting at the latest, because we've got to submit it to get the FEMA approval. The nice thing about the process now compared to 5 years ago is that it literally had to go through FEMA to get approved, which was a bureaucratic hangup. The state of Vermont, through the Department of Emergency Management, now acts on behalf of FEMA in making the approval. So that short circuits the process. But we got off schedule a little bit in terms of the RFP process. So therefore, that's why we're kind of pushed at the tail end of the process.
Okay, so so do we have time to be able to accommodate this active shooter training aspects to it, or not?
Yes, and I don't know if you saw, but just late yesterday, I received a revised draft, which should have that information in there, which I did forward off to you folks in email, but you may just today, so you may not have had the chance to see those revisions. But I definitely will follow up with Kim to have that stuff in there as part of that process to make sure it's in there. Yep.
Okay. Great. I mean, go ahead, Mary.
Just a process question. So just in terms of the motion, if we adopted it as presented in the packet, would that include the, the active shooter piece, Herb?
As part, you should do it as part of the revised packet that we just did earlier today. Because the revised because I apologize for doing so many revised packets, but there's so much information that came in after Friday that was relevant to each of the agenda items and this was one of them that was super late in getting here, but that was when I got it.
So it would be the meeting packet of August 12th?
Yes.
To be accurate? Okay.
Okay. John has his hand up. Thank you, Mary, for that.
How hard is this to amend if we just if we just leave it out for now, since we haven't had a chance?
Yes, is this a 5-year?
And I do find it to be an odd thing to be in the hazard plan.
It is a little bit odd because traditionally, historically, across the United States, these things are more natural, resource-based, like we just talked earlier, a forest fire, a storm, or what have you. But as there are things that are coming up, there are, FEMA can reimburse us for certain things that are presidentially declared disasters. So if there's a pandemic, some other issues, we should be, and Charlotte Metcalf was a good example of some public input that talked about forest fire related that might deal with individual disasters, but not necessarily a regional disaster as a whole. So what we're trying to do is evolve the plan to be more meaningful, that accounts for both, not just the natural traditional thing that we deal with, but for other things that could be quite disastrous, and be able to try to get some funding reimbursement for it.
I think John's question, though, Herb, just to clarify, is, this is a 5-year plan. Can we have amendments to our 5-year plan a year from now or 6 months from now? Like what is that?
Yes, process? You can amend this plan. So sorry, John, I didn't, it will expire in 5 years. You can amend it along the process, but it'll still be within that 5-year window. So if you want to evolve it or make it changes, you can do that. But you do have to do sort of the wholesale change once every 5 years.
Great. Okay, does anyone have any further comment? And then my next question is, do we feel strongly about including the active shooter training piece or not?
Well, I do.
Okay, Mary.
Sorry, do you feel strongly that you want it in, or you feel strongly that you don't?
I do want it in. I was surprised over the course of several meetings that the sort of human caused hazards would even be allowed, but apparently they are. And I do think that a hazard shooter situation is something that we should just be prepared for. So, I don't know how it works with a flood or something like that. there are ways you can be, well, I suppose there are just ways you can be prepared in advance. As far as funding, I don't know if any funding would ever make up for an active shooter incident at all. But to be prepared for it, I think would be a good thing.
Does anyone have any comments on that part before I say anything, John or Rob?
I wouldn't want it to be a backdoor into the, the NRA training sessions. That would be, I think, against what we've already established as troublesome.
Yeah, I think like sort of the key point for me is when you look at the language, it talks about the frequency of the event, right? So floods happen every, 10 years, maybe something like that. Fires happen, with some regularity. And so active shooter was identified as something that happens, infrequently or something like that. So like 1 to 10% of the time, meaning, 1 to 10 times per 100 years. That seems like way overblown for what our situation is in this. And I just generally resist like the constant march to always being afraid and constantly needing to beef up these sort of things in response to something that doesn't seem to be that size of a threat to our community.
Any further thoughts? I mean, I strongly agree. I think both your points were well said. So any other comments on this plan before we? So it sounds like we're in favor of not having that be a part of the hazard mitigation plan, the active shooter training. Is that what I'm hearing?
That doesn't say undermine the plan from that standpoint. It's just that's the decision that you guys make, and that's fine.
Okay. With thanks for, as I said, I appreciated the sort of the human-centered activities as part of this hazard mitigation. So I appreciate it being brought in, but I do agree with John and Rob. The only other comment I would make would be in the beginning when we have the community profile. It says I think there's a lot of things I could say about this plan, and I appreciate John saying we could revisit it in 6 months or a year, but I think the one thing that needs to happen is when we talk about resiliency and we talk about sustainability, it's sustainability and resilience and resiliency and hazard mitigation for whom, and there's no demographic information in our community profile. So I would really like to see things relating to socioeconomic status and wealth foregrounded as part of this. This is a plan for a wealthy white community, and that needs to be defined. We're creating, that's what this is. I think other towns, I'm just seeing if I can find it quickly, talk about that in greater depth. If we don't necessarily need to, but I would like some of the census information being pulled from that. So I don't know how others feel, but I think we're talking about resiliency, it's whose resiliency. So that should be defined just as Norwich. Any other thoughts, or did I just give a TED talk?
No.
Would anyone object?
There is a lot of prescriptiveness to the format. So, there's the buzzwords that are in here. I'm not saying no to what you're saying. I'm just saying a lot of the appearance is because of the similarity of plan to plan, from plan to plan, not just Norwich, but the way that these things are put out by the feds.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm just, to read from Hartford, I know we're doing a lot of that comparison to Hartford, and we are very much different communities, of course, but it says the loss of a home, even temporarily due to disaster, is difficult for anyone, but can be especially hard for homeowners who have large mortgages or don't have adequate insurance coverage, including flood insurance. And I appreciated the statistics that about 25% of the folks in the floodplain only have insurance. So that is captured in other aspects of this plan, but it very specifically in Hartford's talks about 60% of local homeowners carry a mortgage. They do not own their home outright. 32% of local households are very low income households. 11% of households receive food stamp and SNAP benefits. They are defining like what their community is and their ability to recoup from one of these natural disasters. And so if we're making assumptions about like our abilities to recoup, then, or that needs to be for. So I'm just asking for a sentence around our demographic information as other towns do.
Absolutely.
But that's my suggestion. And then we can move on. If people object to it, does anyone object to that? Great. Okay, so is there a motion then? We're ready for a motion?
So how does this, I have a question, again, a reverse process question. So if it sounds like 3 members really do not feel comfortable with including the active shooter piece. So when we make this motion, I think the way I understood it is if we made the motion as presented in today's packet, then it would include that active shooter piece. So how should we do this? Should it be the the packet of August 11th or 10th or what? Or just to not include that piece?
Right, should be your packet of August, what's in your packet of August 12th, omitting the active shooter scenario language and adding some socioeconomic information.
The community profile.
In the community profile section, and as an example, similar to what Hartford has in theirs. Is that, or you can call
So
it?
moved.
Oh, yeah, I second it. Thanks, John.
Sorry, Miranda.
Great. Is there a second?
Yeah, I did second that. I seconded it.
Great. Thank you. Roll call. Mary.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was weird for me. Okay. Where are we on our agenda? I think we're on the dust.
Dust control, yes.
The dust. Herb, can you introduce this for us? Would you mind?
Sure. This is a tabled item from your last meeting. Originally, I had talked about a sole source based on agreement by everybody. We needed to get some bids. Once Larry came back from vacation, he was able to obtain some bids, which again, was one of those, I got it after the packet that went out last Friday. So you have received some additional bid solicitations. The Innovative Solutions remains the low bidder in terms of the chemical product, and they're still offering us the equipment loan, so to speak, in order to apply the dust control mechanism. But in terms of the product itself, which is the same product that we've used in the past, it remains the least expensive of those bids that were solicited by Larry.
Nothing has changed as a result after your additional work.
Not to my knowledge, correct.
Does any select board member have a comment for this item? Go ahead, Mary.
I'm just ready to move it.
Agreed.
Okay. I move to approve a 3-year contract for the purchase of dust control liquid and use of related application equipment from Innovative Surface Solutions.
Second.
Great. Rob's a second. Mary made the motion. Roll call. John.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Cool. Now, where are we?
Executive session, I think.
I think you're right. Sorry, I have too many tabs on my computer. So I don't believe there will be any action following this. So I think we could.
Yes, you will.
There will be an action?
Yes.
Yes, there will. Okay, so we're going to go into, so is there a motion to move into executive session, and then we'll come out of it? Before we do that, can we function without Miranda, would you say? Okay.
I think so.
For our
Yep.
note, just so she can give her, it's already
Not
10.
that you won't be missed.
That's right. In solidarity for your evening. Linda, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Can I unmute?
Yes.
Hi, Roger. How will I know when you're coming back? So that I can dial back in again, or do you think you'll be a half hour, or
You can
just stay on the line?
Have we figured out how to just break out and then leave the session going?
Yes, so I can put you back into the waiting room, Linda, and you'll just, there's no airport, there's no elevator music or anything. You'll just be in a.
Oh, shucks. Okay, so I just leave my phone open. All right.
That's
Thank
the best
you.
I can offer you. Otherwise, you can rely on the amount of time allotted in the agenda, and you could try to get in. But I might, if I don't let you in, it's because we're still in executive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so is there a motion to go into executive? Go ahead, Mary. Thank you.
I move to make a finding that premature public knowledge of the select board's position relative to civil litigation would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Mary?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes. And then do we do a second one? Is that right? Who can help me?
There's a second part.
Thank you.
I move to enter executive session under 1 VSA section 313A1E, pending or probable civil litigation or a prosecution to which the public body is or may be a party, to discuss a litigation issue involving Great River Hydro and to include the town manager.
Thank you. John's a second. Roll call. Mary?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So now we're going to go. I'm going to move everyone into the other room. Hi, Miranda.
Oh, that's good. We have to have the recording.
Go ahead, Mary. Is there a motion to enter public session?
I move to enter public session.
Is there a second? Rob's a second. Roll call, Mary.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Okay.
Note, by the way, I've mentioned this on several occasions before. Did you notice that John Carroll in the town meeting only called for roll call votes when it wasn't unanimous?
It hasn't been the desired practice of our chair, and so I follow their lead. Okay, so
too much process.
I love process. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is another executive session. No, sorry. Is there a motion? Is there a motion for the Great River Hydro?
Let's see. I move to accept the settlement offer from Great River Hydro. Will I do it?
It's the settlement agreement between the two parties, right?
Okay. So I move that the select board accept the settlement agreement between Great River Hydro and the town of Norwich regarding assessment.
Second.
Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So now that that document is a matter of public record, is that right, Herb?
Once it's executed, it'll be a public record.
Great. Okay, so now the next item on the agenda is another executive session. We're over our time and we're scheduled to talk about this for half an hour. My question is before, did Mary and Rob get a chance to have further conversations with Herb?
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, I'm wondering if, even though there's a late hour, if people would entertain maybe a 15-minute executive session to discuss the.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Yes. Move it?
Yes, please.
Okay. I move to enter executive session under 1 VSA, section 313A10, security or emergency response measures, the disclosure of which could jeopardize the public safety, to discuss the town's computer system security, and to include the town manager.
Is there a second? John's a second. Oh.
Rob.
Okay. We all agree? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So is there another motion to enter executive session?
Oh, we don't need the second one.
On this one.
Great. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so I'm going to enter executive session then and move people to the waiting room. There's no action that is slated to be taken.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, just so the public knows. Okay. Is there a motion to enter public session?
I move to enter public session.
Second.
I
beat you.
I think Rob.
You did beat me.
Can we all in favor? Yay.
Yes.
Great. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I second.
Okay, roll call for why not. Mary?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
John?
Aye, Captain.
Okay, and I'm a yes. Okay, 10:33.
Well done jumping in as chair.
Very good. Moved it right along.
Yes. Okay. All right. Have a good night,
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, Cheryl. Good night, Linda.
Uh-oh. Good night, John boy.